of fades away. Kind of nice, like. So, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode or another spine number of Chasing Labels. Now, this is spine number 143. And yeah, we are back here once again for another, I hopeful, fun filled episode. I know I'm going to try at least to have a lot of fun. Um, um, so it's been an interesting 2 weeks. A lot of things have happened in the world of physical media, home entertainment, I guess. I don't know what they're calling it these days. Home media, physical media. We've got a bunch of announcements to go over. We've got a bunch of sales that have been happening. I know I've been partaking a little bit. Like I said last time, the Criterion Barnes& and Noble 50% off sale is upon us. It is the twice a year treat for all us film collectors. I know this is the time of year when I typically load up on them. It's not that they are, out of the realm of possibility buying the rest of the year, but still, 50% off is too good of a deal to pass up. I keep going back to my old Barnes and Noble. I did make a video once again this time, as I do for every sale. Typically, the first time I go there, just getting some footage of what the shelves look like inside. That is actually all set up. It's uploaded to YouTube. I just gotta make a thumbnail for it, put that on it, and then just release it to the public. It was a very pleasant and very happy occasion, I could say. I went in there with a lot of excitement. I don't know. I got to those shelves this time, and I felt rejuvenated. I felt re-energized. I was just ready to buy some Criterions. So that's what I did. I will share a couple of them that I got right now. But before I do that, just want to see who's in here in the comments. Once again, the loyal Humboldt Horror Honey is here. Hello. Hello. Welcome back. The 2 weeks go by super fast. I don't know if that's the way other people feel, but that's the way it kind of is for me. Yeah, so let me get some of the criterions that I picked up. Let's say a little sneak preview of what I bought. Now I got to reach behind me. So I got a bunch of them, and I did go back for a second time already because I mean, why not? So I got Bound, the Wachowskis Bound. This was, I would say top priority, but it was pretty high up there. I got this. This is the 4K UHD release. I got All That Money Can Buy, a film I really loved. It was a self-discovery when it was announced. I had never seen it before. I know we had talked about it at the time, and I know Steven was a big fan of it. I was a big fan of it, so this was really good. I had to buy that. The Roaring Twenties, which has been stuck in DVD only territory for like 20 years. It's been stuck there forever. 4K UHD, had to pick this bad boy up. Super happy about that. Girl Fight. Karen Kusama's Girl Fight. I still have some plastic on it. Karen Kusama's Girl Fight. This was kind of a must buy. A pleasant surprise that this got released. Super happy about that. This movie has also kind of been stuck in DVD land. Kind of a rare DVD. And it wasn't really around too much to pick from. Anatomy of a Fall is another one I picked up as my autofocuses to this. Yeah, this was one of my favorite films of last year. I had to get it. It was the only copy they had. They only had one copy. And then, of course, I had to get Peeping Tom. This was probably the top of the list. It's a movie that had only been released on DVD here in the US before. Coincidentally, by Criterion, they had it on DVD. It went out of print. It's been out of print for a very long time. I know it had been released on Blu-ray and 4K over in Region B in the UK very recently, actually. But I just felt like I had to get this. This is, the exquisite Michael Powell directed this film. It destroyed his career, but also, like I said in the video that's yet to be posted, it's a landmark to his legacy as a filmmaker. This film was so many years ahead of its time. This is the 4K UHD release. I think they only had like one or two copies of this, so I had to pick that up. And then, of course, Dogfight. I needed this movie. I'm hoping more Nancy Savoca gets put on Blu-ray. I know there's two more for films that just got released that I actually have in my cart on Kino Lorber's site, during their sale right now. Those two are must buys for me. So Dogfight was a must buy for me. An exquisite, beautiful film. I can't stress this film enough. People watch it; it's fantastic. And then Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Um, 4K UHD, going to look amazing. Stop motion animation is such a lost art now. Well, it's not lost, it's just not used a lot because it's very expensive and time consuming to do. And Guillermo del Toro is never one to shy away from large and expensive productions. That seems to be his thing for the most part. So I picked this up. It's in a nice digipack form. And then I went back for round two. I had to go back for round two. You just can't stay away. Let me see. Where did I put them? Back here. So I went back and I basically went back and got the things that they didn't have in stock the first time, and they for some reason had in stock the second time. And this is To Die For, the Gus Van Sant film. So I needed to get that. Put this over here. And then Lone Star was another one that was super high on my priority list. When I went there the first time, you'll see in the video that I upload, they only had 2 copies and they had 2 Blu-rays. I went there a second time and they added 2 4Ks, so I picked up one. And then last year, I finally picked up Chilly Scenes of Winter, the Joan Micklin Silver film. The reason why I had hesitated to pick this up for so long is because every single copy at my local Barnes & Noble, every single one, the cover art was had issues. Like, I don't know what it is right now. Whoever is cutting or whatever machine is cutting the cover art at Criterion factories, they're cutting them all way off, and they're coming in all off center and stuff. Luckily, this one doesn't seem to be the case. It was sticking out a bit up top, but I fixed it when I bought it, so it looks really good. Great film by Joe Nicholson Silver. And then a new release this week was Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, the Sam Peckinpah film. Um, uh, and I wasn't aware of how expensive this release is. This is a $70 straight up Criterion release. Like, that's the full price. So at 50% off, you're still paying $35 for a US. I wasn't aware of that going into it, and I can kind of understand why. This is a 4-disc set. I wasn't aware there was a 4-disc set. I probably should know by doing this podcast, but I forget a lot of the minute, tiny details from time to time. So just opening it up here quickly, yeah, it's a 4-disc set. I didn't realize that. So you of course got the 4Ks. You of course got the Blu-rays. Yeah, it looks like, yeah, it's 2 4Ks and 2 Blu-rays. So yeah, that's a heck of a big release from them. And I know still this month we're going to be getting Risky Business, as well as I think Farewell My Concubine, as well as the new Wim Wenders film, I think is also getting released this month as well. So we've got all of that still to come. So I've got to pace myself because I've got to go back a few more times. But that is everything I got so far from the Criterion sale. It's been a really fun last 2 weeks, expensive last 2 weeks, if you will. But we've got some things to talk about today. So let's get into it. I spent about 10 minutes doing all that stuff. So let's get into it. Where do we want to start here? Let me start at the beginning of my notes, at least. We've got Warner Archive. Let me see if I can find the Warner Archive. Yes, the Warner Archive is doing their August releases. They've got a series of releases here, plus one Hanna-Barbera TV show release, which I'm really excited about. And we've got Boulevard Nights, Black Belt Jones, Three Little Words, Words and Music, and then Top Cat, the complete series. That's the Hanna-Barbera animated series. I'm liking that they're sneaking those in there. I'm liking that they're sneaking these in there. I'm a big, like I said on the show before, big Hanna-Barbera fan. For those of you who are new to the show here, we're going to be going over a bunch of the announcements over the last 2 weeks or so, things that I want to add to my collection, perhaps you want to add to your collection, and just things of note, things of interest, at least from my perspective, and perhaps yours as well. But back to the Warner Archive at hand. A little bit of a mixed bag here. I did get to see most of these. Boulevard Nights is an interesting film. It's a film that came out in, I want to say, 1979, and it's a film that chronicles. It says a focus on life in a gang. Boulevard Nights portrays the dangers of street violence. Richard Richard Niguez plays a young Chicano who tries to get out of the gang, but he keeps finding himself drawn back into it. And that's pretty much what the film is about. It's kind of a slice of life film about this young man who's in this street gang and all of the perils that go with it. The violence and the crime and all of those things. It does touch on, familial type of elements, and it does touch on a bunch of those things as well. Um, it's it's a movie that I think is I would say somewhat dated for its time. It doesn't really star anyone of note, but it's a good kind of street level kind of expose on youth and gangs, and kind of a culture warning of that. Um, yeah, so that's Boulevard Nights. We got some comments here from Humboldt Honey. Looking forward to the Kira Muratova set coming on Criterion. Yeah. What is interesting is that at my local store, they don't have any sets at all. Sometimes they'll have a little bit kind of scattered around, but they don't have any sets at all anymore. I've never seen a Pasolini set there. I've never seen a lot of the current sets that are there. Sometimes they'll have like an Eric Romer set. They don't have that anymore. I guess once they sold out of them, they just never decided to replenish their stock. Maybe they're not big sellers. The biggest issue that they have there at my store is they always wrap them with the spider wrap grip. They always wrap the box sets in the spider wrap grip, and it destroys the boxes. I'm not going to spend premium money on a destroyed box. Why would you do that? I understand security reasons, but still, the section in my store is in the back of the store. You know what I mean? It's in the open. It's not like, right up the entrance way or anything like that. So I don't know what the heck they're doing, but yeah, I'm curiously looking for that as well. Um, looks like Disconnected is here. Ryan, nice to see you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching. Hello, hello. Um, yeah, we are. Um, we are just going over the Warner Archive stuff. We're just talking a little bit of Warner Archive. I just talked about Boulevard Nights, which is a kind of a warning gangster film from late 1979, with street gangsters. And then we've got Black Belt Jones. Now, Black Belt Jones is interesting. Black Belt Jones stars Jim Kelly, who was in Enter the Dragon, um, which is apropos because the character he plays, Black Belt Jones, is kind of like Shaft meets Bruce Lee. So that makes sense of why he was in Enter the Dragon. So it says, now as Black Belt Jones, Kelly's fiery fighting expertise rips the screen apart in his first solo star turn, featuring Scatman Carruthers, who was in The Shining, Sultry Glory Hendry, who was in Live and Let Die, Pop Void, who was Scatman Carruthers, owns a thriving karate school near downtown Los Angeles. Unfortunately, it sits on a piece of land upon which a local mob wants to build its own civic center. So basically, what happens is the local mob wants this guy's property and moves in on it. And Scatman Carruthers is kind of a local, like, legendary figure. He runs a karate school for kids. He's a fixture in the community. And once these gangsters start messing with him, Black Belt Jones gets called in to kind of help him out. That's the basic premise of the movie. A lot of kick-ass action. Like I said, it is Shaft meets Bruce Lee. That's the Black Belt Jones character. It's a fun and entertaining black exploitation film from the 70s. I think it came out in 1974. It did. It came out in 1974. Um, so it's really cool. It's getting a 4K restoration from an original camera negative, as well as Boulevard Nights. So those two both getting 4K restorations, and that's kind of it in the way of special features for those films. These are all coming out in August 27th, I think is the date for all of these. Next is Three Little Words, which stars Fred Astaire. That immediately made me interested in it. So it says Burt Kelmer, Fred Astaire, always wanted to be a magician, but all it takes is a disastrous opening night to make his dreams go poof. So Kelmer moves on and finds songwriting magic with collaborator Harry Ruby, the stage and screen songsmiths whose many tunes include Groucho Marx's signature "Hooray for Captain Spaulding," receive a Hollywood hooray in this audience favorite screen biopic featuring a hit parade and Kelmer and Ruby standards. Um, Including Nevertheless, I'm in Love with You, Who's Sorry Now, and the title tune. Steer puts on his dancing shoes for dazzling duets with Vera Ellen and a tap solo. The film was a box office smash and a wonderful showcase for the terpescreen talents of Astaire and Vera Ellen, and one of Red Skelton's best screen performances. Yes, Harry Ruby is portrayed by Red Skelton. Many people may be familiar with the Red Skelton like variety show that he did back in the day. That's where I know him from. That was actually one of the first DVDs I ever owned. Was a best of like collection of the Red Skelton show. I don't even know where that could possibly be. I don't even know if I still have it. But this came out in 1959. It's a later film from Fred Astaire, but he's still like magic on screen when it comes to dancing. Fred Astaire was just an absolute screen legend, and this is a biopic about two real life guys who wrote a lot of great songs and a lot of great memorable songs that pretty much I think people still remember to this day. "I Want to Be Loved by You" is one of them, I believed, and this is an interesting kind of musical biopic from that era. And these two individuals, Burt Kelmer and Harry Ruby, lived, I think, I want to say 1920s. I want to say around that time. Think of like Yankee Doodle Dandy and things like that. Um, so that was interesting. This is getting a 4K restoration. It's got a bunch of features here. It has a featurette, Three Little Words, Two Swell Guys, classic MGM cartoon, ventriloquist cat, classic MGM Fitzpatrick travel talk story, roaming through Michigan, audio only bonus, Paula Stone's Hollywood USA radio promo, original trailer, coming out August 27th. Then Words and Music, I did not get to see, but it stars a pretty interesting Rolodex of people here: Mickey Rooney, Tom Drake, Betty Garrett, and Janet Leigh. And I believe this is an MGM musical. It's an MGM musical. Let me see, from what time frame am I looking here? 1948. 1948. Let me read a little bit about it here. So Mickey Rooney, Tom Drake, Betty Garrett, Janet Leigh, and a host of top musical performers. I think Judy Garland is in this film as well. Producer Arthur Freed's extravagant biographical tribute to the prolific songwriting duo of Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart. In the early 1920s, the diminutive Hart teams up with Rodgers to launch a successful 24-year music career, penning nearly 500 songs with him until Hart's death in 1943 at the age of 47. So once again, we have a musical biopic. So that's interesting to me. It's got a lot of, songs here. I think Gene Kelly is in the film as well. Yeah, I am very interested in this as well. Yeah, Sid Charisse, Judy Garland, Lena Horne, star-studded cast in this thing. Star-studded cast. 4K restoration on this as well. It's got a commentary by film historian Richard Barrios. Featurette, A Life in Words and Music. It's got unused musical sequences. I guess deleted scenes, really. Yeah, very interesting. And then last here is Top Cat, the complete series. I want to see when this ran. Yeah, so Top Cat ran from 1961 to 1962. Probably part of that era with the Jetsons, with the Flintstones, Yogi Bear. Scooby-Doo was later. Scooby-Doo was later. But you understand what I'm saying. That 60s era of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Let's see who else is in here. We got some other comments here. Film Nut 79. Hey, Andrew, and everyone in the chat. That's Tony. Nice to see you. Nice to see you as I catch up here on that. Humboldt Honey says hi as well to Tony. Let's see. Film Nut. Let me go back to him. Watched Horizon and Sting yesterday. Horizon was great and Sting was okay. Let's see. Tony saying hi back. Awesome. Everybody's having a nice jovial time, if you will. A nice there's another word for this, but I can't remember what it is. So that is Warner Archive. So that's some more good Warner Archive stuff. I was thinking of getting my not Warner Archive, my Hanna Barbera stuff that I currently have, but it's in the shelves in another room where I have my TV stuff. So I just left it there for now. I was running around trying to get ready for the show, trying to get all set up, get all the tabs ready, make sure I've got everything ready for the stream. Make sure I remember the sequence of everything. That's a big thing to remember. So let's move on from Warner Archive. Let's move to, I don't know if we want to do this early, but you know what? Why the heck not? Let's go to Arrow. Why not? Why not? I'm here, they're here, we're all here. So Arrow had their September releases, and this was really announced a little while ago on June 28th. So the same week I had done the previous episode, this week these were announced at the end of that week. And we've got an interesting slate here. An interesting slate. So we have The Threat, The Chronicles of Riddick. We've got Friday the 13th, the remake. And we've got Torso on 4K. We got Love, Death, and Apocalypse, 3 films by Alex de la Iglesia. This is a 4K set of his films. There's also a Blu-ray counterpart to that as well. But that's kind of the big highlight of this slate, in my opinion. I know probably many of you listening already own those movies from the Severin 4Ks or Blu-rays that have been available now for, oh goodness, a number of years. I think as long as we've been doing the podcast, those movies have been kind of around. I think Axiom Mutante was the most recent one released by them. But the other two, Perdita Durango, and let me go back here. Perdita Durango and The Day of the Beast have been available for a little while. Yeah, so might as well talk about these. So we've got Axiom Mutante, The Day of the Beast, and Perdita Durango, 3 film set, all from the director Alex de la Iglesia. And I had not seen these movies until now because I was actually waiting to buy the Severin 4Ks at some point in time. Now I've got to wait. Now I've got to wait for this release just because I like the concept of this box set. And I like the idea that, you've got tons of features per each one. Each of them's getting a brand new commentary. They're all on their own disc. Bunch of special features per release. They all have 4K presentations in Dolby Vision. They all have got their original Spanish audio. These films are not for the faint of heart. Alex de la Iglesia, well, I wouldn't say these are exploitative films. They're unique films. Axiom Mutante is this weird dystopian movie. I think of it as John Waters doing a Mad Max dystopian film. That's how I would explain Axiom Mutante. What a wild movie. Just a brilliant film, in my opinion. It does take a little bit of getting used to. The style and the world is way over the top, ridiculous as can be. But if you just go along with it, it really it will take you on a trip. So Axiom Mutante, or Mutant Action, if you want the English language translation, waging war against all things glamorous and beautiful, crippled terrorist Axiom Mutante plot a series of attacks on society's elite and attempt the kidnapping of a wealthy socialite at her elaborate wedding reception. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It gets way weirder than that because there's a sci-fi element to this film as well. Yes, space travel is involved in this movie as well. Yeah, you got to experience this movie on your own to really understand what the heck I'm talking about. But moving on to The Day of the Beast. The Day of the Beast is a little more down to earth, if you will. It's a movie that I think we had covered when it was announced for Severin, and I think neither Steven and I had seen it at the time. So a devilishly dark comedy. Oh, I guess so. The story revolves around Basque, Roman Catholic priest dedicated to committing as many sins as possible. A death metal salesman from caravan shell, and an Italian host of a TV show on the occult. These go on a literal trip through Christmas time Madrid to hunt for and prevent the reincarnation of the Antichrist. So this priest is basically trying to prevent the end of the world from happening. He has deciphered some clues in the Book of Revelation, and he thinks he's got to do a bunch of things to prevent the Antichrist from coming about. And he ropes in this like death metal salesman guy who runs like a record shop, and then this occult TV guy with him as well. And they're just like going on this wild kind of trip through Madrid at Christmas time, no doubt, to prevent the end of the world. Weird movie, bold movie, I would say. Interesting movie as well. Yet again, you've got to experience it for yourself. It is available to stream on Tubi currently if you're so interested. But once again, these movies aren't for everyone. These movies aren't for everyone. And devilishly dark comedy is certainly a way to put it. Certainly a way to put it. There is a sense of comedy in Alex de la Iglesia's films that I don't know if are intentional, and if they are, it's super dark, super dark. And his darkest film that out of these three is Perdita Durango or Dancer with the Devil. This movie is really, really dark. So this movie stars two people you may know, Rosie Perez and Javier Bardem. The late great James Gandolfini is a DEA agent in this movie. When he showed up, I was pleasantly surprised. Really cool to see him on screen before he was on The Sopranos. This movie came out in '97. Sopranos' first season was in 1999. I think the pilot for The Sopranos was shot in like 1997. So it was around that time. Um, but here is the letterboxed synopsis for her. She's sexy, shameless, and loves taking people to their limits. She's a dangerous young woman who dreams about a jaguar that does a lot of things and sleeps by her side. Her past is bathed in blood and weird passions. Now she's met the man of her wildest dreams. He's dark, tough, mysterious, and he likes robbing banks, trafficking in corpses, and spicing it up with voodoo rituals. Together, the duo sets off toward Mexico, destined to become the most feared outlaws in the continent. So what you have here is like a Bonnie and Clyde, a the duo from Natural Born Killers. We're completely spacing out their names right now. Um, and what you get is an even more sinister, darker portrayal of them in this movie. This movie is dark and dirty and off-putting. Javier Bardem, man, in this movie just has no limits, and Rosie Perez is like his counterpart, and she and them are like yin and yang. They're like two sides of the same coin, and they are just dark and deviant people. That's why this is kind of the darkest of these three movies. And yeah, I had heard about this movie for years and I had wanted to see it, but I was waiting for the Severin to get the Severin 4K. But I thought now was as good as time as ever, so I could talk about it here with all of you. And yeah, Alex de la Iglesia is a filmmaker whose work I am fascinated by, absolutely fascinated by. Um, yeah, this movie is kind of a road trip film as well. They take two people captive and they go on this kind of road trip, and they're basically being hunted by the James Gandolfini DEA agent character the whole movie, and that's kind of the plot of it. Uh, yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. Let me go back here and check the comments. Um, let's see. Oh, Josephine's here. Let's see. Oh wait, let me go back. Hello, Josephine. Josie, how are you? I just finished reading the Wild Robot trilogy by Peter Brown in anticipation of the film coming in September. Cool. I think you mentioned that last week. I did end up finish reading Cloud Atlas, actually. How they were able to turn that book into a movie is fascinating to me. It makes me want to go back and rewatch the movie just to see how they pulled it off. I've seen the movie and I remember the movie. I just don't the structurally. I don't know how they pulled it off. The Wachowskis. In the movie, like I said last time, the book Cloud Atlas is done in anthological form, and there's like a nesting doll level of connection between each story, and the story is told both forwards in the first part and then backwards in the second part. Yeah, it's tough to explain, so I got to rewatch the movie. But nice. Um, And Josie's also seen Kinds of Kindness tomorrow. Nice, nice. I want to see that as well. I've been watching so many movies for the podcast that I still need to catch up on new stuff from this past week. And that's one of the movies I really need to see. I need to see that. I need to see Maxine. I need to see the new Quiet Place film as well. That's basically going to be my priority for the rest of the week, is catching up on stuff I need to catch up on in terms of movies. Um, we've got nice. Tony's already seen Kinds of Kindness. Nice. I heard it's weird, which it's Yorgos Lanthimos, and all of his films are weird. That's his thing. That's his thing. Let's see. What else has Josie been up to? I'm finishing up watching The Strange World of Coffin Joe from 1968. Yeah, from the Coffin Joe box set. I know Steven and I talked about that when it was announced. I think that was the only film I got to watch from that set, was the first one. Interesting movie. Let's see. First time watches from Josie. The Twilight Zone movie from 1983. Cool. The Mindbenders Touch from 97. Did I get to see that? I think that was the one that Vinegar Syndrome just put out. I don't think I've got to see it yet because I'm waiting to get that cinematograph release. And then Prince of Darkness from 87. Cool. Lair of the White Worm, also cool. Brain Dead. Oh man, where is our Blu-ray? Where is our 4K of Brain Dead? We've been promised that for years by Peter Jackson. If that is indeed the Peter Jackson film, we've been promised forever for that movie. That's got to be one of the bloodiest movies ever. What a blast that movie is. And then Remember My Name from 1978. Let's see. Tony's talking about Perdita Durango. Yeah, I can't believe we first see your character in David Lynch's Wild at Heart, portrayed by Isabella Rossellini. Is that the same character? I did not know that, Tony. I did not put that connection together at all. Yeah, wow, I did not realize that. Let's see. Thank you, Tony. Mickey and Mallory. I knew the second name was Mallory from Natural Born Killers. Couldn't remember that the first name was Mickey. So think Mickey and Mallory for Perdita Durango, just even more dark and sinister and deviant. Let's see. Josie has more stuff. Remo Williams, Bad Boys from 83. That's the one with Sean Penn when he's in prison. Red Sun. I think that's the Red Sun that I've seen. I think that's this one. Hold on. Hey now, getting sidetracked here. This is what happens when you don't have a spotter here. Is it this one? Is it this Red Sun? Perhaps. Let's see. Blue Sunshine. Yeah, I watched that actually. We're actually going to talk about that. I think. Let me see if it's in my notes. Yeah, Blue Sunshine. This because Synapse is putting it out. So we're going to talk about that a little later once I get past all of these. Let's see. Oh, George Romero's Amusement Park. That was like one of George Romero's lost films that was unearthed a few years ago. Very cool. Last Hurrah for Chivalry and Strange World of Coffin Joe, which you mentioned. Last Hurrah for Chivalry. I held the Blu-ray in my hands at Barnes & Noble, and I wanted to buy it. I may buy that. I may get it this sale. So what happens is when I get to like the last part of the sale run is when I just start picking like random things to buy. And I may buy that just because I want to see it. It's an early John Woo film. And I kind of want it in my collection. But anywho, let's see. A book similar to Cloud Atlas I recommend that is very good is Sea of Tranquility by Emmett St. John. You know, I'll add it to my reading list. I'll add it to my reading list on Goodreads. Let's see. I think that's Tony talking about Kinds of Kindness. That is a long run time. Let's see. Asking Tony if he's seen. Let's see. Can I do that? Oh no, yeah. So asking Tony if he's seen Coffin Joe. Hasn't seen it yet. You'll have to catch up on. It's never ending. Tony, it's never ending. No matter, I could watch 10 movies in a day and I still will have so much more to catch up on. But speaking of catching up, let's see. We're still in Arrow. We did Love, Death, and Apocalypse, 3 films by Alex de la Iglesia. Let's talk about what else they've got here. So, Torso, if I remember correctly, is a Sergio Martino film. Yes, it's a Sergio Martino film. I believe it's a giallo. A series of sex murders shock a college campus, and four beautiful young girlfriends head for the safety of an isolated country villa. But as they succumb to their erotic desires, their weekend of pleasure becomes a vacation of dismemberment at the hands and blade of a lecherous maniac. Yep, that sounds like a giallo to me. It really does. Um, so that is from Sergio Martino. That's getting a 4K release with a ton of special features here, or maybe not. Yeah, it's got an audio commentary by Kat Ellinger, who we all love here, who wrote All the Colors of Sergio Martino, the scream charm of the genre, interview with actor Luke Miranda, Dale S. for Suspense, interview with co-writer Ernesto Gastaldi, Woman in Blood, interview with filmmaker Frederica Martino, daughter of Sergio Martino, very cool, Saturating the Silver Screen, interview with Mikel J. Coven, author of La Dolce Morte, vernacular cinema and the Italian giallo film. So I was right. This is a giallo. I think I've seen this before. Yeah, this is coming with the theatrical cut on one disc and the killer cut on the second disc. I like when they do the whole, yeah, they call it a killer cut, as if this movie didn't have enough of that in it already. It's got two new audio commentaries as well. It's got new interviews. This is a stacked release. No, that's hold on. I skipped ahead. So, the theatrical cut and killer cut is for Friday the 13th, the remake from 2009. I remember when this movie came out. I don't think I saw it in theaters, but I think I remember renting it on DVD and watching it then, or something like that. Because this would be before streaming. This would be before you can rent things like video on demand renting and stuff like that. So I think I remember that I wanted. Hold on, let me check something for a second. I think this is part of their yeah, I think this is part of their Warner Brothers deal. So Arrow, as we've been talking over the last little while, has a distribution deal set up with Warner Brothers. We've seen it with The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which is coming out this month in 4K and Blu-ray. We've seen it with the coming out with the Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans, and now we've seen it here with Friday the 13th, the remake from 2009. Interesting that they would go with this and not what everybody seems to want would probably be. Well, actually, we got it already. But even a 4K box set. But I think that maybe someone else has the rights to that already. That's what I'm guessing. We did have that Friday the 13th box set that was put out by Shout Factory a couple of years ago. That's very interesting. I have that actually. I don't know if I ever did a video on that. I did. I did a video on that. So there's a video up on the channel about that set. Check it out if you haven't already. But yeah, I think that was included in the set. Maybe. Yeah, I think that was included in the set. So this is an interesting release, but this is coming with a theatrical cut and the killer cut. My bad from before. That's what I was when I'm scrolling up frantically. Like I said, two new brand new commentaries, 3 new interviews with the director, with the writers, with the cinematographer. It was a damn shame that they never ended up doing anything more with this reboot, or remake, if you will. There was this was part of that run in the 2000s and early 2010s where they were just doing remakes of classic horror films, and a lot of them never quite really went anywhere. Remember they did Nightmare on Elm Street, they did Friday the 13th, they did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then they did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. And they were doing a bunch of those things. Halloween, they did Rob Zombie's Halloween and Halloween 2. They rebooted that, and now they're going to be rebooting it again in some other form. So it's very interesting that 2009 Friday the 13th didn't take off quite the way they wanted to. I remember at the time when it came out, it being a little bit of a box office disappointment. Perhaps that's the case. I remember the film starring Jared Padalecki, who was in the show Supernatural at the time. I remember watching it for that. But yeah, it's the usual premise: a bunch of kids, young people in the woods, hanging out, and then Jason happens to show up, and because they're at Crystal Lake. That's his territory. That's his jam. Once you go in his territory, he doesn't want you there. He's gonna come after you. That's the general premise of all the Friday the 13th movies for the most part. But let's move on from there. I've talked enough about that, way more enough about that movie. Chronicles of Riddick, I think, is actually underrated. This is the sequel to Pitch Black, which they've already put out on Blu-ray and 4K a couple of years ago. I've got those on Blu-ray in my collection. I've been wanting to get that 4K because I heard it looked amazing. Pitch Black, I heard it looked really, really good. And then Chronicles of Riddick is getting a release here as well. This is a 2-disc release. It's the theatrical cut and the director's cut. And there's a third disc here that's got the theatrical cut in the alternate 1:7:8 aspect ratio. Um, yeah, it's got Escape from Butcher Bay, a compilation of cutscenes from the acclaimed tie-in video game. The Lowdown, a television special produced to promote the film's original release. That's all on the third disc, and that's a limited edition exclusive. These all come out in September. Probably should have said that already. What else do we got here? What was the first one I talked about? The Threat. So The Threat was something I wanted to watch, could not find it streaming anywhere at all. And this is something. It says The Threat is a gritty crime drama in the vein of Kurosawa's High and Low, set against the backdrop of a rapidly modernizing Japan that has left many of its citizens behind. Misawa appears to lead a charmed life, the very model of Japan's post-war economic miracle. His position as the account manager of a prestigious advertising agency is enough to pay the mortgage on the spacious modern house he shares with his wife and their 2 young boys, and kitted out with all of the latest modern conveniences. Then one day, the fragility of his existence is revealed when 2 violent jailbreakers turn up on his doorstep seeking refuge and threatening to embroil Misawa in their criminal activities. Yeah, this is an early film by Kinji Fukasaku. That's why I wanted to watch it. That's really why I wanted to watch it as well. Kinji Fukasaku seems to be getting talked about a lot lately, with a lot of his movies getting released. Let me just check quickly because I always forget half of these things. That's not where it is. Hold on. I'm trying to check Kinji Fukasaku's. Why don't I have it? Usually it's on my watch list on Letterboxd, and I can't find it for some odd reason. So yeah, Kinji Fukasaku. Let me go to IMDb. Because that's just giving me fits. Yeah, he directed Battle Royale. That's what Kinji Fukasaku directed. He directed Battle Royale. That's Battle Royale 2. Those are what his claim to fame seemed to be. But early on in his career, he made a bunch of great films. And I've talked about him a bunch of times here on the podcast. Let's see. Of course, Letterboxd being notoriously so. Oh yeah, he directed. Yakuza Graveyard, which I've talked about here on the podcast, and Samurai Reincarnation he directed as well. Yeah. So I've seen a bunch of his stuff. Battles Without Honor and Humanity is another big one. There's a whole Arrow box set of those movies. So yeah, you guys kind of understand what I'm saying here. So that is Arrow. Let's move on from Arrow. Let me check my notes now. Let's go to Eureka. So because Eureka and Arrow seem to go hand in hand. When it comes to announcement time frame, one comes and then the other does. So Eureka Entertainment actually has a couple of interesting releases. One big one here. Let me talk about this big one here first. So Louis Feuillade, The Complete Crime Serials, 1913 to 1918. Once again, similar to what I talked about last time, we're getting like some theatrical serials on Blu-ray now, which is really cool. So an early cinematic pioneer with undeniably pervasive influence, Louis Feuillade made hundreds of films in a short career spanning only a few decades. Today he is remembered for his landmark serials Fantomas, Les Vampires, Judex, and T-Min. Four crime epics that have had an immeasurable impact on popular culture around the globe. The Masters of Cinema series here is honored to present these silent masterworks on Blu-ray for the first time in the UK from astonishing 4K restorations. That is incredible. Kudos to Eureka for doing that. Like just rescuing these from cinematic history and presenting them in the probably the best they're ever going to look. I've seen none of these serials, but I am fascinated by this release. This is probably the most interesting release from Eureka of these films. This includes all four serials on 10 Blu-ray discs in 1080p from stunning 4K restorations, courtesy of Gaumont Film Company. It's got a brand new commentaries on select serial chapters, brand new interviews with film critics and historians, a collector's booklet featuring new and archival writing on Louis Feuillade, and the serials included in this set, and it says and more, so could be more coming. These are all coming out in September. This is coming out September 30th. Mark it on your calendars because I kind of want this now. I really want to check these out. The thing is with serials are long, they're episodic. I talked a little bit about serials from before. Serials were the precursor to episodic television. They were the precursors to all of that. You had to watch them in the theater theatrically. They're about 12 to 15 minutes long, whatever, give or take, whatever. But you would see them periodically in the theater. They would probably play before a movie or something like that. And yeah, they're the prequel before serialized episodic television. Cool concept, really cool concept, short form entertainment, but with a long form story, if you will. So that's really cool that Eureka is doing that. Let's see. Let's check out. Yeah, they have two other releases here. The Champions. It's a sports, action, and comedy collide in Golden Harvest. The Champions, the precursor to Shaolin Soccer. That's a movie I haven't heard referenced in many a year. From the first family of Hong Kong and martial arts cinema, the inimitable Wen clan. Li Tong is a young farmer who has grown up in an isolated rural community when an indiscretion lands him in hot water. He leaves his home in the countryside and heads for the big city where he meets Swen, a street footballer who recognizes Tong's talent for the beautiful game and encourages him to try out for a pro team. But Tong's first chance at football and glory is scuppered by a rivalry with the narcissistic king, who relegates the newcomer to cleaning up after the athletes. But having discovered a love for football, Tong soon accepts an offer to join a rival team, and the stage is set for a final confrontation with King on the pitch. Sounds cool to me. As someone who's a big sports fan, who likes sports movies, the rivalry, the pageantry of sports, all that kind of stuff. That sounds very interesting. And the random reference to Shaolin Soccer is incredible to me. That was a movie came out when I was very, very young in the theaters. It's a movie I haven't seen in many a year. This is getting a 2K restoration, two new audio commentaries, one by East Asian film expert Frank Zhang, who always seems to end up on these releases from Eureka. Brand new audio commentary by action cinema experts Mike Leader and Arn Venema. They tend to be on here as well. Andrew Heskins on The Champions. Brand new interview with film critic Andrew Heskins. Yeah, there's another brand new feature right here. And then Two Taoist Tales. Let's see. In the wake of Encounter of the Spooky Kind, the Hong Kong film industry launched headlong into prolific genre cycle that drew upon Taoist folklore. Popular through the 1980s and into the next decade, these films combined elements of horror, fantasy, comedy, and martial arts as they pit their protagonists against hopping vampires, vengeful ghosts, and evil sorcerers. Here, Eureka Classics is proud to present two of the most mind-bending tale of Taoist magic ever committed to film: Taoism Drunker and Young Taoism Fighter. Directed and starring Wen Changyan, Taoism Drunker follows a man with a love for wine who accidentally damages a sacred statue. To atone for this blunder, he is asked by an enraged Taoist priest to find someone to aid in defending his temple from a demonic sorcerer. Sounds cool to me. And then let's see. And then in Young Taoist Fighter, A practitioner of Taoist Kung Fu manages to separate his soul from his body before teaming up with a vengeful young woman to take on a sinister sorcerer. So you got evil sorcerers, you've got martial arts, you've got a wild good time essentially. That's what you got with these movies. There's two both films is a new 2K restorations of both films. You got brand new audio commentaries from the people I just talked about in the previous one. You got an interview with director and actor Wen Chang Yan. That's pretty cool. Brand new interview with critic Andrew Heskins, which I just talked about as well. Of course, you got some booklets with this and slipcovers and such. And the Touch of Evil is getting, I think, a standard release in 4K, and then Pandora's Box is getting a standard release in 4K as well. I still want to track down the limited release of Pandora's Box. I thought it was one of the best releases of last year. So that is Eureka's September releases. Some good stuff coming from them. Where are we going now? Where are we going now? Let's go to Shout. Let's go to Shout Factory / Scream Factory. They've got some stuff. Let me check the comments here before I move on. Let's see. What stories do you think will pan well with Kinds of Kindness? That's what Josie asked to Tony, and then Tony responded, as an anthology film with 3 stories, it's difficult to answer that one on its own type of film. That's interesting. That's interesting that it's an anthology film. I'm curious about anthology films and how people feel about them, because I feel like it's difficult to fully engage with anthology films because you get so wrapped up in a story and the characters within that story, and then you all of a sudden it ends and you move on to another one. So you got to reestablish that connection with the story, re-engage with the film on another level. And sometimes the anthology stories can be radically different from one another. So that can be disengaging for me and disengaging for others. Josie, you heading out? Thanks for letting me chat with you guys for a bit. Going to read, then fall asleep. Isn't that the best? I used to do that all the time when I was younger. I used to read before bed and then have the most pleasant sleeps. Nowadays, I don't do that. I basically watch movies until I pass out. That's me every single night. That's me every single night. Um, Especially the last few nights where I'm just like cramming so many movies to talk about for the podcast. I just go until the wheels fall off, as they say. So let's talk about some Scream and Shout. Let's shout it all out. So we've got some 4K releases here. We got a 4K of Village of the Damned, the John Carpenter film Doomsday 4K, the Stepfather 4K, the Strangers 4K, the Amityville horror remake in 4K. I was just talking about horror remakes from the 2000s. There's the Amityville horror one. We got The Boy 4K, that movie that came out a few years ago now. I think it came out. When did it come out? 2016. Okay. That's a lot longer ago than I remember. Man, 2016 is a while ago. Is a while ago. It's 8 years ago now. So we have no list of special features for any of these right now. These are all coming out in September. I'll just talk about a little bit what I got to see. Village of the Damned is kind of disappointing. The movie stars Christopher Reeve in one of his non-Superman roles, which of course he had a few. Directed by John Carpenter, came out in 1995. Was a remake of the original film, I think from the 60s, I remember. A small town is visited by some unknown life form, which leaves the women of the village pregnant. 9 months later, the babies are born, and of course, there's they're they're like they're like children of the corn type children. Like they walk around in packs. They all dress similarly. They all have glowing eyes. They all have the same hair color and style. And they're all up to no good basically, except for like one of them who is kind of the outlier of them all. This movie does star Christopher Reeve, like I said, Kirstie Alley, Michael Paré, Meredith Salinger. Mark Hamill plays a priest in the film. The film is fine. It's not like I think the film thinks it's supposed to be scarier than it actually is. And there's just like there's a lot of not great like plot going around the movie. Like 9 months go by, and actually years go by, and there's just this time jump. And I'm like, no one tried to put a stop to these children all acting weird like this beforehand. We've kind of just accepted it at this point. There's a lot of things like that. It's okay. I wasn't really impressed by it. It's got a little Fog vibe to it. You know, John Carpenter's The Fog. I guess would be a close comparison to it, a close companion film to it, but it's not great. It's not a great movie, Village of the Damned, which was kind of disappointing for me because I'm such a big John Carpenter fan. Eventually I'll have to get it because I have a John Carpenter section and I've got to complete it. Got to complete it eventually. Doomsday is a movie I haven't seen, but I've been wanting to watch for years. This movie's been on cable so many times. It's been on, I think it's been playing on HBO and now HBO Max or just Max forever, forever, since it came out. Came out in 2008. And it's like a dystopian type of film. Authorities brutally quarantine a country as it succumbs to fear and chaos when a virus strikes. The literal walling off works for 3 decades until the dreaded Reaper virus violently resurfaces in a major city. An elite group of specialists, captained by Eden Sinclair, is urgently dispatched into the still quarantined country to retrieve a cure by any means necessary. Shut off from the rest of the world, the unit must battle through a landscape that has become a waking nightmare. I remember this movie specifically for starring Malcolm McDowell and Bob Hoskins are in this film. Yeah, that's what I remember is just like Bob Hoskins in this movie. It's directed by Neil Marshall. Neil Marshall, who of course did Dog Soldiers, a great low budget indie horror werewolf film, which has a 4K from Second Sight, which I still need to get. I love how every time I do this podcast now, it just reminds me of things I don't have and still need and want to get. That just seems to be a pattern now. It seems to be a pattern. So that's Doomsday. I'm still probably going to watch it because it's available to stream right now on Max. So that may be like a nice late night watch for me. The Strangers I watched way back when it came out. The Strangers came out in 2008, and I remember distinctly renting this on DVD. And my cousin and I watched it, and I was thoroughly unimpressed with it at the time. Granted, at the time I was like 21 years old and immature and didn't understand anything about cinema or anything about really the horror genre in general. I was very naive at the time to horror movies. And The Strangers for me like was incredibly predictable in terms of the jump scares it was trying to go to and all that kind of stuff. And also this kind of concept of being alone in a house in an isolated area and then stranger people kind of show up and I'm just like, why aren't we escaping this, doing the logical things of how to escape this situation? But that was me, dumb 21-year-old. I haven't revisited it since. I know they've made a sequel and then a prequel. I think they've made since. So yeah, obviously it does have its fans. It does have its fans. I remember the movie starring Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. I remember Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia had a role in the movie as well. Yeah, so that's The Strangers, and then The Stepfather, the film from 1987, the year I was born, Terry O'Quinn, starring Terry O'Quinn, who I always thought was kind of an underrated actor, kind of a career character actor guy, one of those types of actors. Of course, I think a lot of modern audiences may know him as Locke from Lost. I yeah, I know him as John Locke from Lost. I know there's been a lot of Lost talk lately because Lost is now on Netflix. It seems like every time something hits Netflix, there's always this social media talk about the show and people talking about when they watched it or watching it for the first time, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the power of streaming and social media coming together as one. So a lot of people are talking about the show Lost now, and John Locke, of course, Terry O'Quinn being on it. But this movie is an interesting, pretty cool, I think, um, horror film from 1987. It's about this guy who very beginning of the movie, not really a big spoiler here, brutally murders his family and then just escapes and changes his identity and moves on to another one and is planning to do the same thing again because he's a sociopathic serial killer essentially. And Terry O'Quinn plays it pretty straight and pretty well. Like he's got these moments where he will just like burst out in anger just randomly and then go right back to being like normal. And then he'll be normal and then burst out in anger again. So you see the cracks in his psyche just like slowly breaking away, and that's how the movie kind of plays out. Good. I really liked it. The Stepfather. I think they remade it once again in the 2000s. Once again, the 2000s had those remakes, and the Stepfather I think was another one of them. So probably many of you maybe had seen that one as well. I think I've seen it as well. So that's the Stepfather coming out in 4K. Um, Let me see some comments here from David. I like that you have a John Carpenter section in your collection, Andrew. Thank you. That's careful curation. I admire that. Well, thank you. Yeah, I've had a John Carpenter section for many years. It's not complete. I don't think any of my directors' sections are complete. They're always ever a work in progress. Um, Sometimes a lot of their stuff just hasn't come out. Um, sometimes I'm waiting for the Blu-rays instead of buying the DVDs. Sometimes now I'm waiting for the 4Ks. And sometimes I'm trying to see what's the best edition. I know with John Carpenter, we've got so many editions of his work. Uh, just Halloween, just the Halloween in general, we've gotten DVDs, we've gotten Blu-rays, we've gotten 4K release now of just Halloween of John Carpenter. And of course, we've gotten like deluxe releases of The Thing on DVD, The Thing on Blu-ray, The Thing on 4K, but we've got different editions of different companies. So it's like, which one do you get? I've seen a lot of people get a bunch of different ones, and I'm always trying to search for the best one, or at least the best one for me. So I've got to go reassess my John Carpenter section because I'm missing a couple of key ones. I'm missing like Prince of Darkness. I really want to get that. I know there's a 4K of that's been around for a few years. Um, I have They Live. I've got. I don't have a lot of his like post '80s work or post early '80s work. I got to get my hands on some of that stuff. Um, let's see what else we got here. Um, yeah, multiple directors. Yeah. Well, that's been my thing. I always have like this direct. I haven't shown off my collection because it's always kind of a work in progress. See that behind me there? See that those movies over there? That's my director's wall. Where I've got directors from A to Z. So I start with J.J. Abrams and go all the way down to Edward Zwick, I believe is the last one I have. So that's the start of it back there. Obviously, it's all blurry; you can't see any of that, but that's what that is over there. To the right of me here, which you can't see, is like genre stuff and things like that. Um, so that's the way I've had it organized since I've been collecting DVDs from like 2008 or even or like actually more like '07, '06. I've always put them in alphabetical order by director until I've gotten so many that I've got to like, curate it. You know what I mean? I can't have everybody get their own section. Some I've got to take out over time, all those things. But that's just been me for years. Let's see. Humboldt Honey says, anyone seen Maxine? I've been wanting to see it for since it came out last week. That's probably what I'm gonna do this week. Like I said, I bought Pearl to pair with X. So I've got Pearl here. I've watched Pearl twice already. I've seen X twice already. So I think I'm pretty good prepared for Maxine. That's what I'm probably gonna do this week. Um, I've heard good things about it. Let's see. Nice. Hello, Steve. Welcome, welcome. I'm just talking about uh the way I have my collection, the alphabetical order by director. So I have like director sections, and we're just talking about Maxine, which came out. Talking about how I just got Pearl. And then what were we talking about? I forgot what slate we were. Oh, we were talking about Scream Factory / Shout Factory. I was talking about The Stepfather and how it's getting a 4K release starring Terry O'Quinn and how it got a remake. The Strangers, the Amityville Horror 4K. I don't know how people feel about this movie. I've seen the original. I don't think I've seen this remake. This one starred Ryan Reynolds, Melissa George, Jesse James, young Chloe Grace Moretz must have been in this as well. It was produced by Michael Bay. Didn't know that. Did not know that at all. I remember when it came out. Came out in '05. So this was like, yeah, this was Ryan Reynolds before he became the big star he is today. This is when he was doing a lot more of his own stuff. Not his own stuff, but a lot more of like the heart of his career was in the 2000s. When you get a movie like Buried which doesn't get talked about at all, or the movie like Voices, which also doesn't get talked about at all. I think a lot of people have been really caught up in Ryan Reynolds um, um, doing Deadpool, and then all the movies he's done after Deadpool, including Deadpool 2, is kind of him just playing the same similar character. But he's got some character stuff. He's got some good indie stuff in there that people don't know about or don't talk about enough. In the 2000s and in the 2010s and stuff like that. I saw a tweet a while ago where people were basically just saying Ryan Reynolds is the same. He's the same in every movie, and I'm like, depending on the movie you watch, it really depends. You know, let's see, which one did I enjoy more? X or Pearl? Um, oh man, so X is different than Pearl. I liked Pearl a lot. I think I liked Pearl more. Yeah, I think I liked Pearl more. It was a tighter film, and it had, it had a singular focus, and Mia Goth really, I think, commanded that movie. Like, she really elevated that film. Like, you were captivated by her and her character. The unpredictability of her character lent to the sense of dread and horror of the situation, and the delusion of her character was something that she played in a sadness, but in a horrific sadness. Really, truly becoming like kind of trying to be in league with some of the icons of horror, the iconic characters of horror, like a um like a Bateman, you know what I mean? I was gonna say Patrick Bateman, but yeah, Patrick Bateman. And like a Norman Bates, like those types of characters, those introspective characters who are psychologically not quite there. You saw that in Pearl, and what Pearl did as well, I think, is really um helped elevate X. I really think it did. It gave us the backstory, it gave us the insight into the character she portrayed in X and why she is the way she is, and how it's not a sudden thing, like how there is a level of backstory. I know a lot of people don't like backstory to their horror films, or to their horror icons. I know, people didn't like what Rob Zombie did with Mike Myers in his Halloween film, giving us the backstory of his traumatic childhood and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like it because you can't really go anyplace else with those characters. You know what I mean? They've been pushed to the limit so far that you've got to almost retrack back and that fill in that story because you've gone already too far. But yeah, I really liked Pearl. I thought Pearl was better. I liked the kind of weird fantasy world that movie was also portraying as well. Someone I saw on Twitter compared it to like a demented Wizard of Oz or something like that. Um, yeah, I think that's what I have to say about that. But let's see. We're talking about Amityville Horror from 2005, and then Creepshow's getting a 4K steelbook, and then Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is getting a steelbook edition as well. So moving on from there, let me check my notes. We're moving on from Charlotte. Let's move over to Kino. Kino right now is having their big summer sale. They're having their big, was it spring into summer sale? Yeah, spring into summer, where they've got a bunch of things on sale. I've got a bunch of things in my cart on there. I'm just waiting for the dust to clear when it comes to Criterion, the Criterion sale. It's like Criterion sale, highest priority, then Kino, and then whoever else decides to do whatever they're doing. I know Vinegar Syndrome had a sale this past week, or had daily sales this past week. I'll get into that when I get to Vinegar Syndrome. But let's run through Kino a little quickly. Coming out August 27th is a movie called The White Dawn, directed by Philip Kaufman. Philip Kaufman, who is probably most well known for directing The Right Stuff, as well as I think writing the screenplay for Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's an audio commentary on here by the director Philip Kaufman. There's an intro by Philip Kaufman. This movie is interesting. So it's a period piece starring Warren Oates, Timothy Bottoms, and Louis Gossett Jr., who just recently passed away. And The White Dawn tells the true tale of three sailors in 1896 who are separated from their ship during a hunt for polar bear and walrus. Indigenous people who live on the Baffin, I think that's Baffin. Oh, Baffin Island, just south of the North Pole, save their lives, but one angry sailor brings fear and violence to all. It's the Warren Oates character. So I can tell you that. This astonishing Arctic adventure was helmed by Philip Kaufman, the acclaimed director of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which I also have right here. So I've got this. So he directed this as well. Uh, he, yes, says this astonishing Arctic adventure was helmed by Philip Kaufman, the acclaimed director of The Body Snatchers, The Wanderers, and The Right Stuff, with magnificent location footage by cinematographer Michael Chapman, who shot Raging Bull, and I think he shot. Yeah, I think he shot Raging Bull. I wanted to say he shot Taxi Driver as well, but don't quote me on that. And it's got music by Henry Mancini, one of the famous composers. Now, this movie is, like I said, a true story, a period piece. It's a slow burn of a film because what you have here is these three men just interacting with the indigenous people of essentially the North Pole, the Arctic Circle area, basically um, up north, northern Canada, if you will, and they get stranded there, and they're just trying to survive. And of course, you've got uh, you know, cultural issues, you've got a language barrier, you've got these men who are completely out of their element, completely um, perhaps uncaring of the cultural customs of these indigenous peoples, and all of that. And of course, they're going to ruffle feathers, and there's going to be some conflict and some issues and things like that. That seems to be um, the case when it comes to culture clashes. You know what I mean? So that's what that movie's about. Pretty good movie. I actually rather enjoyed it, but it's a bit of a slow film. Not a lot happening when it comes to plot. I'll say this: Warren Oates in this movie is such an asshole. Like he doesn't care about being sensitive to cultural things, about anything like that. He's just, really such an ass in this movie. Timothy Bottoms is kind of, being indulged in the culture, and Louis Gossett Jr. as well. Not Warren Oates' character. No, not at all. So that is The White Dawn. Moving on from The White Dawn, we've got Aces High. Aces High from 1976. This is coming from a Studio Canal restoration. So Studio Canal, I think, put this out a few years ago. It's got a new audio commentary by film historian Howard S. Berger and Steve Mitchell. Interview with director Jack Gold. Interview with star Malcolm McDowell. Yes, Malcolm McDowell is in this film, as well as the late great Christopher Plummer. That information was enough to get me to watch it. So that's why I watched the movie. So, the fighter pilots of the First World War were glamorized as dashing, devil may care aces. But Gresham, Malcolm McDowell, commanding officer of the squadron, lives with the reality, knows that it is very different. Young, brave, and a true patriot, but exhausted and old before his time, he meets each batch of eager recruits with quiet despair, knowing their families are unlikely to see them again. When the latest arrival turns out to be young Croft, Peter Firth, uh, fresh fresh from his old school, the strain threatens to become intolerable. Based on the acclaimed play Journey's End by R.C. Sheriff, Aces High tells a moving story of comradeship, courage, loneliness, and fear, directed by Jack Gold and produced by Benjamin Fizz, who produced the Battle of Britain, and containing some of the most magnificent aerial battles ever staged. The stacked cast also features Christopher Plummer, Simon Ward, David Wood, John Gielgud, Trevor Howard, Richard Johnson, and Ray Milland. So this is a post-World War, actually, this is a World War One movie about World War One flying aces, really, which is a movie you don't see movies about World War One flying aces a lot. When you think of aerial warfare, you think of World War Two and onward. That's when aerial warfare really became prominent in when it came to military strategies and a military, stage of action and warfare. So you got some kind of old school planes here, like two-man fighters and stuff like that. It's not as sophisticated as we saw with like B-52 bombers in World War II and whatnot. So you've got basically it's you and the elements going, doing some dogfighting up in the air, and it's it's a tough situation to be in. It really, really is, and the movie kind of shows that how dangerous it is. Great cast, good movie, dealing with some interesting, timely themes, some evergreen themes, I would say. Warfare being harsh, being dangerous, and also cautionary tale. Cautionary tale. So Um, let's see. Oh, David. Let's see, David. I love the Rob Zombie remakes. Unpopular opinion, I know. You would be correct. I guess it is unpopular. I know a lot of people prefer the first film to the second film. Maybe I'm in that camp as well. I don't completely dismiss those movies actually at all. Um, let's see what else we have here. Humboldt Horror Honey. Oh, Tony's gonna be watching Maxine this Friday. Oh, it's his birthday. Well, happy early birthday to you, Tony. Let's see what else we've got here for comments. Well explained, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you. I try my best. Love them both, but Pearl was next level. Yeah, it really is true. Pearl took it up to another level, which I think is that's what you want to do with a sequel, really, is you want to expand upon the foundations of the first film. What a lot of sequels tend to do is they rehash a lot of the first film and then build a little bit upon it, maybe. Sometimes they don't do it at all. Sometimes they change aspects of the first film greatly. But no, I think Pearl did it the right way, and I have to see what Maxine does to kind of round it all out. I mentioned last time I thought we were getting a fourth film, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Let's see. Oh, David, you're in the first camp. The first one is better. Yep, understand. The second, you can tell the second Rob Zombie Halloween film, Rob Zombie just decided to make his own movie. He just like, I'm just gonna go off, do what the ever the hell I want. While we've heard stories, like you've heard him on podcasts, you've heard him say this over and over again. When like the first film, the studio like kind of hounded him. You know what I mean? They were really on top of him. And then I guess the second film, they just after the success of the first film, because the first film was a box office success, hence why we got a second one. I guess they just let him do his thing. He would be a cool person to have on a podcast. He's a big film fan, like a super film fan. I've actually seen him in concert. I've seen Rob Zombie concert way back before I knew. I didn't even know who he was in terms of as a filmmaker. Um, I saw him in concert. He was like part of like an undercard of another band I was seeing at the time. Wild concert. He would have pictures I think up of like movie clips, and I think of like comic book strips as well on the background of when he was performing. Really cool, really cool. Big film fan. It's a damn shame that people really did not quite get what he was doing with his Monsters movie. Um, he made a Monsters movie exactly the way the Monsters is, and it warts and all. You know what I mean? The cheesiness of the monsters from the time it came out on screen, and people obviously weren't expecting that. Kind of a shame, you know what I mean? Because you could tell that was a passion project for him. Um, but let's see, where was I? Yeah, I was talking about Kino. Moving along on Kino train here. We talked about Aces High. Let's see, move on to the next one. Oh, Graveyard Shift. Here we go. We're talking some horror. Um, so, Graveyard Shift is a Stephen King adaptation of a short story that came out in 1970. Well, it was written in 1970. This came out in 1990, starring David Andrews, Kelly Wolfe, Stephen Macht, and Brad Dourif. This is directed by Ralph S. Singleton, and I think that he's most known for being a second unit director. If you look at his credits on IMDb, and you can kind of tell because I think this is the only feature film he ever directed. He shot some TV show stuff before this, and I think this is the only feature he ever directed. But this is coming soon on a 4K UHD. We've talked a lot about Stephen King on the podcast. Of course, we had Julia Marquezi, who directed her own Stephen King short film adaptation. Um, I Know What You Need, I believe was the title of that. She was on our podcast twice. Her film actually is going to be streaming on, I think Apple, not Apple, is going to be streaming on Arrow Player. I think it is. Follow her on her social media, Julia Marquezi, um, and go back and watch the interviews we did with her, and see her movie if you can find it. Really interesting adaptation of something that I don't think has ever been adapted from Stephen King's work before. And yeah, it was really cool. But this is interesting. This is a movie that I think falls into the category of the lesser Stephen King adaptations. So this is Graveyard Shift. And as you can imagine, it's set around a graveyard shift at work. So John Hall is a drifter. The character of John Wall is a drifter who wanders into a small town in Maine, of course, Stephen King. He needs a job and decides to seek employment at the community's top business, a large textile mill. He is hired to work the graveyard shift, which, for those of you listening, don't know what a graveyard shift. That's typically midnight to dawn. That's the graveyard shift. He needs it. He is hired to work the graveyard shift from around midnight to dawn, like I said, and along with a few others, he is charged with cleaning out the basement. That this task strikes the workers as simple enough, but then as they proceed deeper underground, they encounter an unspeakable monstrosity intent on devouring them all. So, yeah, this movie's got the typical Stephen King monster lurking in this weird small town with weird characters type of situation going on. So they work at this textile mill and there's this basement that's flooded. There's all kind of rats around. So they are hiring these people to work this shift to clean it up. And the deeper they go, the weirder things get, the more monstrous things get. It's not great. It's not one of those great adaptations of one of his great works. Um, but I think if you're a completist, maybe you'll want to watch it. If you've read the short story, maybe you want to watch it. If you're a fan of Stephen King in general, I guess check it out. But it's not great. Brad Dourif is in the film, and I thought he was the most interesting part. He's kind of this weird rat catcher guy, exterminator guy. Um, Yeah, it's fine. It's a fine movie. It's something to watch, honestly, probably around October. Probably makes for a nice October viewing with a lot of the other Stephen King stuff. So yeah, that's Graveyard Shift. So moving on from Graveyard Shift, let me scroll up here. Oh yes, big news here. So Kino will be putting out their own editions of Smoke and Blue in the Face. If you remember recently, Imprint's putting out both of these movies in a double feature, like box set, like they like to do, like a hard case box set. And these are the Harvey Keitel films. This was part of their basically Harvey Keitel month, where they're putting out a Harvey Keitel box set and a double feature of box set of Harvey Keitel films as well. And Kino, in typical fashion, is putting out their own versions of stuff that Imprint's already put out. I don't know what's going to entail when it comes to features comparison, because we don't have any list of features for either of these releases yet. It just says brand new HD masters supervised and approved by director Wayne Wang on Smoke, and brand new HD masters supervised and approved by director Wayne Wang for um, Blue in the Face. Smoke is amazing. That movie is so damn good. I cannot recommend that film enough. It is. I was so pleasantly surprised by it because I had went into it completely blind, never heard anything about it before. And yeah, it was such a great movie. Blue in the Face, n- different, different. And different doesn't necessarily mean bad. Different can mean not not like the first film, doesn't quite have that captivating spirit of the first film. The second film is more anthological, and I think they shot it in a very short amount of time, and it's kind of feels almost like extra footage they had left over from the first film. They just cobbled together for a second film and then added some more film on top of it as well. That's what Blue in the Smoke is like. But um, either way, watch these movies. Watch these movies, please. So that is Smoke and then Blue in the Face. Um, yeah, I can't wait to see what they put on that for special features. Then next we've got Hunted is getting a 4K UHD release. Now, if I remember, Hunted just came out recently. This is the William Friedkin film. Um, Oh, The Hunted from 2003. Yeah, this just came out in 2022, put out by Paramount. They put this out directly. I kind of feel bad for the people who bought it. Maybe have to rebuy it now. But this is the William Friedkin film starring Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro. Connie Nielsen is in the film. An FBI deep woods tracker captures a trained assassin who has made a sport of hunting humans. So that's kind of it. So basically, Benicio del Toro is kind of on the lam, and he's hunting humans, and he's kind of like he's got like PTSD. He's got something. It's kind of like a Rambo type situation going on, and they basically bring Tommy Lee Jones out of retirement to catch him because Tommy Lee Jones was one of the people who like trained him in like some military secret, you know, super soldier type of thing. You know what I mean? Not explaining it well at all, but that's kind of the premise of the movie. I watched it, I think last year or this year, one of the two. It's fine. It's William Friedkin, so it's well directed. Well acted. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's a solid movie from William Friedkin, the late great William Friedkin. So check that out. Nothing in the way of special features yet. Still says it's coming soon. So we shall see. Let me see if the Paramount release had anything in the way of special features, and it did actually. It had an audio commentary by Friedkin himself. It had looked like 4 special features and then deleted scenes. So hopefully those carry over. Um, that would be nice. That would be really nice. So let's see. We are done with Kino. We are done with Kino. Um, yeah, we're done with Kino from now. Let's go to Imprint. Speaking of Imprint, we talked about them just now. Let me be able to see. So we'll talk about Imprint has their third batch of Imprint Asia is coming to Blu-ray in September. And their third batch consists of Brother from 2000, Cliff Walkers, and then Ride On from two. So Cliff Walkers came out in 2021, and then Ride On came out in 2023. And the reason why I wanted to talk about these films, specifically the first two here, Brother is directed and starring Takeshi Kitano. Takeshi Kitano directed The Blind Swordsman Zatoichi, which they've also released. There's that connection there. And this is a gangster film. Abandoned by the brotherhood of his Yakuza clan, tough guy Yamamoto is forced to leave Tokyo. He goes to Los Angeles in search of Ken, his younger half-brother. Alone and with a new identity, Yamamoto finds himself frustrated by foreign surroundings, especially since he doesn't speak the language. The movie also has Omar Epps in it, and what is interesting about the movie is they don't say it here is that he ends up basically setting up his own uh, organized crime gang in America, his own yakuza, and kind of starts taking over territories, starts bumping up against the other organized crime elements, you know, getting on their territory. People like the other yakuza gangs, as well as the Italian mafia. So he gets in a little bit over his head, but the movie kind of shows you the progression of all of that. Very interesting. Let's see. And so that's the movie Brother from 2000, and Takeshi Kitano is an actor I'm pretty sure many of you are aware of. Let's see. Like I said, he was in Zatoichi or The Blind Swordsman Zatoichi, that remake. Um, but he's also actually, let me go check the letterbox first. Let's see. Scrolling down, going over to Brother, going to Takeshi Kitano. Yeah, he was in Battle Royale as well. We talked about Battle Royale. He was in Johnny Mnemonic. Let's see, what else was he in? Oh yeah, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, the Criterion film, the one starring David Bowie, the one directed by Nagisa Oshima. That's a great film. I really wish I owned that movie. That's a great film. I've seen that film twice, and I think I liked it even more the second time I saw it. He's in that film as well. So yeah, let me move back over to there. So the second film is Cliff Walkers, which I actually saw last night. This was the last movie I saw in the slate of movies I watched for the podcast. This is directed by Zhang Yimou, and this is one of his latest films. Like I said, 2021. is when this movie came out. It's set in the Imperial Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo in the 1930s. The film follows four Communist Party special agents who return to China after receiving training in the Soviet Union. Together, they embark on a secret mission codenamed Utrenya. After being sold out by a trader, the team finds themselves surrounded by threats on all sides from the moment they parachute into the mission. There was a lot going on in this movie. Cliff Walkers. Um, First of all, the title of the movie is definitely more of a metaphor than actual thing. There's no cliff walking happening in this movie. It's more of the idea of the anxiety and the danger of walking a cliff. You could fall at any moment. And that's kind of the tension that's throughout this entire movie. Is there's these people basically caught behind enemy lines. They've been betrayed and they're kind of stuck and they're trying to survive. They don't know who to trust. They don't know what to do. The plot is constantly moving, constantly changing throughout this movie. There's a lot going on in it. You don't know who's good, who's bad, what's going on here. You just know that danger is around every corner. So this movie kept you on your toes. That's what I really appreciated the movie is that level of engagement, that level of a spy thriller. And I believe this is the only spy thriller Yang Jimo has ever done. He's typically not known for doing these types of movies. So it was cool to see him step out of his realm of comfort, relative comfort, and do something different, do something challenging for him, and probably challenging for the audience that typically knows his movies. And I've seen a bunch of Yang Jimo films, um, uh, and I'm not an expert in any way, but I felt like this was something different from him, but still had this sense of very good acting, very good smooth filmmaking. Just the craft in Yang Jimo films is on another level. You can appreciate it from that perspective. But this film may throw you for a loop. You may get lost while watching it. I know I did. But still, I was ever engaged within the film, ever engaged within it. So that is Cliff Walkers from 2021, directed by Yang Jimo. The last film I did not see was called Ride On, which stars um, no, who does it star? It stars Jackie Chan. It's Jackie Chan and a horse. That's kind of the premise of the movie. The great Jackie Chan stars in the hit new action comedy written and directed by critically acclaimed filmmaker Larry Yang. A washed-up stuntman and his stunt horse become an overnight social media sensation when their real-life fight with debt collectors goes viral. Hilarious, epic, and surprisingly moving. This slick film is filled with references to Jackie Chan's filmography and is a must-see for fans of his work. That sounds interesting to me, and in the very least, perhaps I will go and give it a watch after all of this. So those are the three films that are coming out in September from Imprint's Asia line. That is Brother from 2000 by director Takeshi Kitano, Cliff Walkers by Yang Jimo, and Right On by Larry Yang, starring Jackie Chan. So that is it from there. So let's see, where are we now in my notes? We have come to the individual portion where we've got a couple of individual ones I want to point out here. Um, yes, so Blue Sunshine, I mentioned earlier. I know that Josie, she's gone now, but she mentioned Blue Sunshine, the film from the 70s. At least I believe that's the film she was talking about. Um, yeah, it's getting a 4K release. Hold on, I think I gotta check because I believe. Hold on. Oh, no, here it goes. My page had to yeah, so Synapse Films exclusive. It's a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray and a CD, limited to 4,000 copies. It's coming out June. Actually, it came out already on June 25th, so I'm way off here. Um, uh, so Synapse has already released this. Why? Oh, because there was no article for it on Blu-ray.com. There we go. That's why. So, yeah, so at a party, someone goes insane and murders three women. Falsely accused of the brutal killings, Jerry is on the run. More bizarre killings continue with alarming frequency all over town. Trying to clear his name, Jerry discovers the shocking truth. People are losing their hair and turning into violent psychopaths, and the connection may be some LSD. All the murderers took a decade earlier. Um, so this is kind of a giallo film from the late 1970s, being put out by Synapse. I think they put out the Blu-ray several years ago as well. So this is an upgrade directly from them. This is an interesting movie, kind of straightforward in its presentation. That premise is basically the premise of the movie. You have this guy who's accused of these murders, and he's trying to clear his name, and he's unfolding the reason behind all of this and the connections behind all of this. Um, yeah, that's the movie. That's kind of the movie in a nutshell. I just want to point out that it's getting a 4K UHD release from Synapse. Actually, already has one. June 25th came out already. So moving on to another individual release is The Farmer. Hold on here. So The Farmer, which came out in 1977, this movie just got a Blu-ray release. I want to say 2 years ago by Scorpion Releasing, and this was a big deal at the time. I know we had talked about it a little bit here on the podcast. I know Steven, I think, had gotten the Blu-ray, or at least had watched the movie at the time, and it's a movie that was kind of lost. It had no DVD. It had no VHS. I don't think. I don't think it had been released since like Laserdisc days. I don't even think it had a Laserdisc release at all. Basically, it had just never been on home media, and it wasn't streaming anywhere. Just one of those lost movies, and it was rescued from obscurity. And now it's getting a 4K UHD release from Dark Force Entertainment. Unfortunately, this is going to be Dark Force Entertainment's last 4K release. They wrote a whole post on their Facebook page about why. Basically, cost. If you've been following this podcast long enough, you've heard us talk to people over at Indicator, over at Severin, over at Vinegar Syndrome, over at Second Sight, and other places, and you know that 4K UHD releases are very expensive. You know what I mean? I think they're much more expensive than Blu-ray releases to create and produce and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not making, money back from it, you're gonna run out eventually. Gonna run out of resources eventually for them. So the bang is not worth the buck, as they say. So I think that's what the case is here. But before they go out, before they stop making 4K releases, Dark Force Entertainment is giving us The Farmer in a 4K Blu-ray release. This movie is very interesting. It is streaming right now on Tubi if you want to check it out, and it's a classic 1970s revenge film. I know Quentin Tarantino was a big fan of this movie, and after watching it, I understand why. It's very similar to something like Straw Dogs, something like a Sam Peckinpah film. It's got that type of vibe to it, but even a smaller budget. But I'll just read the synopsis here. World War II is over, and Kyle Martin returns to Georgia to try his hand at farm life. With no money to save his failing farm from foreclosure, Kyle finds himself in dire straits. A local gambler offers Kyle $50,000 to kill some mobsters who blinded him with acid, but Kyle refuses. Meantime, Kyle falls in love with the gambler's girlfriend, Betty. Soon the gangsters catch wind of the offer and burn down Kyle's farm, killing Kyle's friend Gumshoe in the process. One of the gangsters even goes so far as to do all kinds of dirty, terrible, despicable things. And basically, Kyle decides to take up his newfound friend's offer and get his revenge. What this description doesn't tell you is that even though Kyle is he's a veteran from World War II, he's returned from home, the bank still won't give him any type of leeway, won't cut him a break at all, won't help him out in the least bit, won't extend him a loan, won't extend the payments, won't even take payments at all. He tries to pay them a little bit, they won't accept it, and it goes to it hits on this theme that we've seen in a few films, that people coming back from war, people who have enlisted in the military, when they come back, we hail them as heroes when they go off to fight these wars, but when they come back, they're often not treated well. You know what I mean? And that happens all the way to this day. There's a whole list of political VA problems with the system today that this film obviously doesn't understand that it's touching upon, but it really is. You know what I mean? It happened in the movie Mudbound as well. when someone came back, these African American soldiers coming back from the war are still treated terribly, even though they fought for the country, they sacrificed for the country, gave their lives, were willing to give their lives for the country, still hit, you know, still hit with racism and prejudice and mean and vitriol and violence. This film here is not hitting so heavy on that fact, but it is playing on that idea that even though this person is coming back from war, is still getting screwed over by a bank. You know what I mean? It's something as mundane as that. So he's got to take it upon himself now to do something extreme to make up for that. And that's what this movie is depicting. And it's depicting it in a super over the top 70s gritty violent uh form, kind of like a Sam Peckinpah film. Really dug this film a lot. I will definitely be getting this 4K. I've been wanting to get the Blu-ray for a couple of years now, so now I can get the 4K of it. Check out The Farmer. Check it out. It's streaming on Tubi now for free with ads, of course. Yeah, so that's really cool. Let's see what else I've got here individually. Some Studio Canal stuff, and then we will get into Vinegar Syndrome, and then we will make our way out of here. Hopefully, I'm making good time. Oh, Humboldt Horror Honey, you just read my mind. Yes, I just mentioned that I will be getting it. After seeing the film now, it's definitely something that would be on my radar to buy. Let's see. I saw Blue Humboldt Horror Honey putting us all to shame. I saw Blue Sunshine as a kid, creeped me out. Well, it does. It is a creepy movie, especially when those first kills happen. They come out of nowhere, and they're frightening. They're supposed to be frightening. Let's see. And then Humboldt Horror Honey giving a happy birthday to Tony. Yes, happy early birthday to Tony. Let's see what we've got here for some Studio Canal stuff, and then we'll get into Vinegar Syndrome. Humboldt Horror Honey, I'm assuming you'll appreciate the Vinegar Syndrome stuff. Your name kind of suggests it. But so Studio Canal is putting out 2 films by J. Lee Thompson. J. Lee Thompson being a director that I don't think I've talked about much here on the podcast. J. Lee Thompson directed, let me see. Directed the original Cape Fear. That's of note. Directed a bunch of films with Charles Bronson, like 10 to Midnight. Also directed the 4th Bronson Death Wish film, which is called The Crackdown, which is, I always found that to be a hilarious title. He also directed, let's see, what else have I seen here? Oh, Murphy's Law with Charles Bronson. The Evil That Men Do with Charles Bronson. You're seeing a bit of a theme here. A lot of Charles Bronson stuff here that I'm noticing. Also, Happy Birthday to Me, that slasher film from the 1980s as well. I talked about that early in the podcast life, I believe. So that is J. Lee Thompson, but he directed The Weak and the Wicked, and also directed another film here as well. Directed No Trees in the Street. So let's talk about this film first, The Weak and the Wicked. The Weak and the Wicked is a women in prison film. Jean Raymond, an upper-class woman with a gambling addiction, is given a 12-month prison sentence resulting from her inability to pay her debts. At first, she is overwhelmingly depressed by life in the women's prison. Gradually, however, her misery is relieved by the many close friends she makes there. This sympathetic drama traces the contrasting lives and often faltering progress of the inmates of a women's prison. So, what we get here is like a women in prison film. This woman, she goes to prison and she meets all of these other women in prison. Then we kind of get their backstories as well. Some of them are tragic, some of them are traumatic, some of them are harrowing. And she ends up becoming like close friends with a lot of the women in there, specifically one played by Deanna Dors, who becomes like her best friend. And the film kind of shows kind of what the prison system is supposed to be, an idealistic portrayal of the prison system where it's supposed to be reforming. It's supposed to be fixing these broken people who've done, criminal things in society. That is the ideal idea of the prison system. Today's idea is a lot different. You have the prison industrial system. You have the for-profit system that prisons have now become. You have the idea that prisons are made for punishment, which they are, of course, but they're supposed to be, I guess, for reformation. Um, and this film's kind of showing that. But granted, this is 1954, much more ideal time than we have now. So that's what this film is about, and it's a good film. It's a really solid film. You know what I mean? Next, we've got a movie that I forgot to log on Letterboxd, so that bothers me to no end. So let me check my watch list because it should be on there somewhere. Um, let's see. Of course, now that I scroll down, it's not here. So the movie, oh yeah, there it is. No trees. Uh, oh, have I seen this movie? Hold on. No, I did not see this movie. That's why I didn't log it. Hey, so No Trees in the Street. Based on the play by Ted Willis, the film is set in the years just before World War II, when England hadn't completely dug itself out of the worldwide depression. Melvin Hayes is featured as an aimless teenager who tries to escape his squalid surroundings by entering a life of crime. He falls in with local hoodlum Herbert Lom, who I believe was in the Pink Panther films, who holds the rest of the slum citizens in the grip of fear, including Hayes' own family. No Trees in the Street chronicles as Hayes' sordid progress from nickel and dime thefts to murder. That's quite a leap, quite a leap. And these are both put out, like I said, by Studio Canal through their Studio Canal. Is it their Vintage Classics line? Yes, their Vintage Classics line. I think these are both getting 4K restorations, both getting new special features, um, both kind of just, catalog British films from the 1950s. The Week and the Wicked was from 54, and No Trees in the Street is from 59, both directed by J. Lee Thompson. Both of interest to me, so that's why I thought I would talk about them a little bit. So we are done with that. One more single here is the Criterion Collection is announced that it's going to release on Blu-ray Lilia Villa's Totem from 2023 in September. And I believe this is going to be their next Janus Contemporaries. Description: in a bustling Mexican household, 7-year-old Soul is swept up in the whirlwind of preparations for her terminally ill father's birthday party, led by her mother, aunts, and other relatives. As the day builds to an event both anticipated and dreaded, Soul and her family begin to understand the gravity of this year's uh, celebration. Lilia Velez directs a dynamic ensemble cast in this stunning sophomore effort, a warmly observed, poignantly funny, and emotionally expansive study of the ways we cope with grief. And there's one special features on here, which is a new interview with Lilia Villas. This sounds fascinating. This is streaming actually on the Criterion channel right now. I wanted to watch it in time for the podcast. I just, ran out of time. But the movie's called Totem. Probably next Janus Contemporaries film coming out in September, on September 10th. Check it out if you have the Criterion channel. I don't think I've seen a Janus Contemporary film that I haven't really liked. They are also on sale at the Criterion sale right now, and they're always so tempting. Because they're so cheap. They're slightly cheaper. They're about $15 a piece, US. So that is that. So let's move on now. Let me get rid of some tabs here so I don't lose my mind. Let's see. Got rid of that. We are on to Vinegar Syndrome. They had quite a week. So before I do that, let me get myself situated here. Sitting in the same position for an hour and 48 minutes does do something to you. So Vinegar Syndrome had their subscribers week, where people had the opportunity, I believe, to subscribe to their subscription service for the rest of their year's releases. But they also had some daily deals and some daily announcements as well. I partook in a few daily deals. I was able to get some releases that I wanted to get, that we had talked about here on the show, and I just had never picked them up, and they were on sale for about $13 a piece, which was nice. So let me see what I actually got. Maybe I'll reveal that while I'm here. So let me go over to my orders. Let's see. The first order I did here, I got Burning Paradise, the Ringo Lam film, and Iceman Cometh. And then I got two more films. I got Wolfpack, the VSA release. I really liked that movie actually. And then I got Ape, which was the movie. Who did Ape? It was one of the partner labels. Let me look it up really quickly. Of course, I forgot to click on that. Factory 25. Factory 25. So that was released by them. And then, of course, they had on the first, they had their new slate released, and they have a few films here. Reptilicus, A Chinese Torture Chamber, Story 1 and 2, Intrepidos Punks / Vengeance of the Punks. Those were the Video Syndrome proper releases. Reptilicus I've seen, because I think Mystery Science Theater 3000 did Reptilicus in one of their revival seasons and one of their new seasons. I think the first season they were on Netflix, because they did 2 seasons on Netflix. Mystery Science Theater did. And I think Reptilicus was one of them, one of the movies that they watched. Kind of just a bad, terrible, like kaiju, like knockoff kaiju film. Not knockoff, but you know what I'm saying? A lesser kaiju film. Something even lower than like Gamera or something like that. Still fun, still cool, but you know, obviously capitalizing on Godzilla and the other kaiju and doing their own thing. Smaller budget, cheesy, over the top. You know what I'm saying? Um, a Chinese Torture Chamber 1 and 2. These are 2 Category 3 films. So from what I heard about these movies, if you know Category 3 films, they're going to be gory, they're going to be dark, they're going to be, pushing the boundaries, if you will. They're going to be not for everyone. If you've seen these types of movies, this is coming in I believe this is a 2-disc set. Newly scanned, restored in 2K from their original 35mm camera negatives. Commentary track, one by Sam Deegan for part 1 and one by Frank Zhang on part 2. Alternate 92-minute Mandarin language edit of Chinese Torture Chamber story with newly translated English subtitles. Brand new interview with Wang Jing, producer of Chinese Torture Chamber story 1 and 2. Cat 3 Films of Wang Jing, a video essay by Justin Decloux of the Important Cinema Club. We've had Justin Decloux. I believe that's Justin Decloux. It's our buddy. And then we got a video essay by Erica Schultz. Titillating Torture is the title of the video essay. Let me go back to Reptilicus just to see what's on that release. Reptilicus is actually a 4K release. I should point that out. It's a 3-disc set. You got a 4K UHD presentation and high dynamic range. Newly scanned and restored in 4K from its 35mm original camera negative. Includes the US disc debut of the alternate 95-minute Danish version of Reptilicus with English subtitles. That's fascinating. Excuse me. Commentary track with film historian Nicholas Barbano and novelist critic Kim Newman. Cool to see Kim Newman show up on one of these. 50 Million Years Out of Time, Revisiting Reptilicus, a 32-minute new retrospective film featuring historian producer Robert Parigi and screenwriter / film historian Courtney C. Joyner. Or C. Courtney Joyner, my bad. Pink Goes West, Life After Reptilicus, an interview with filmmaker, historian Jay Jennings. Invincible, Indestructible, a 29-minute illustrator, author, and film historian Stephen R. Bissett on Reptilicus and its enduring legacy. Yeah, Reptilicus, I guess, has its fans. I appreciate the movie more than I like the movie, but I understand its faults. Let's see. The last one here is Intrepidos Punks / Vengeance of the Punks. Is a 1-disc set. It's a region-free Blu-ray, newly scanned in 4K from the 35mm original camera negative. It's got a 30-minute making of documentary. It's got a 20-minute making of documentary as well. So 2 making of documentaries on there. That's really cool. And then moving on to the cinematograph. Which is, I'm pretty sure that's not how you say that. And I haven't looked up the way to say it yet, and it's becoming a running thing on here, is of The Last Embrace. This is a movie I did get to see. This is a Jonathan Demme film from 1979, so an earlier Jonathan Demme film. This was before he did Married to the Mob, before he did Something Wild, before he did Silence of the Lambs, before he did Philadelphia. This is a movie starring Roy Scheider, and it's a movie that is let me see if it, let me get the premise for this on Letterboxd here. Actually, I gotta scroll all the way down to not find it, of course. Where are you when I need you? There you are. Last Embrace. Secret agent Harry Hannon suffers a mental breakdown when a botched mission in Mexico results in the death of his wife. He is sent to a mental asylum, after which he eventually returns to work. But once again, he begins to doubt his sanity when he receives a bizarre death threat written in Hebrew, not knowing which of his colleagues wants to kill him. Hannon teams up with pretty young college student Ellie Fabian to attempt to unravel the mystery. So yeah, what you get is Roy Scheider as a like special secret agent who has a mental breakdown and then once he comes back from that, he's rusty. He's still paranoid about just the world around him. He thinks people are out to get him, and he's trying to unravel the mystery of once he receives this note written in Hebrew that's a bit mysterious. So he goes around to people to try to um figure out what it means and all this kind of stuff and whatnot. And he ends up getting involved with this young woman who goes along with him to try to figure it out as well. A very young John Glover is in the film as like a college professor. John Glover, of course, is another kind of career character actor, but he played Lionel Luthor in the Smallville series, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. He was amazing in that. As I'm going through my Smallville rewatch, I'm being reacquainted with his brilliance. So he's very young in this movie. It's amazing to see him look so young. But yeah, you got Roy Scheider kind of on this journey. It's a pretty good film. It's a pretty good film. It's pretty decent. I think the film kind of falls apart or kind of comes apart in the end in the third act. Once things kind of get revealed, I think the whole movie kind of falls apart, and the ending kind of ends a little flat for me personally. I won't get into what it entails because that would be spoiling it. But yeah, it kind of lands a little flat for me, but it's still something I want because the the cinematograph line is really nice. I showed this off a few weeks ago, and I think I might as well show it off here for anyone new. I've got one of their releases in Red Rock West for my birthday back in June 17th. Um, and yeah, I really like the way they do it. It's a nice digipack or digibook, really. Um, and yeah, it comes out like this. There's the disc holding it. I think this is pretty much the way all of them look. I've got to get my hands on a couple of other ones. I'm kind of waiting for them to perhaps go on sale, be a little cheaper and whatnot. You know, sale price never hurt anyone. I'm losing my voice right now. So that's that. That is The Last Embrace. It's got a new audio commentary with his film historians Howard S. Berger and Steve Mitchell. The Labyrinth of Last Embrace, a new video essay by Sam Deegan. Very cool. Archival interview with producer Michael Taylor. And then new written essay by film critic Jim Hemphill, culture critic Jev Lang, and cinematographs Justin La Liberty. Cool. Excuse me. They did have another Vinegar Syndrome Pictures release in 8 Eyes. They also had a VSA release in They Call Me Macho Woman. 8 Eyes, the artwork on 8 Eyes looks amazing. It's a movie from 2023. It's from their their VSP line. Directed by Austin Jennings. American tourists Cass and Gav are backpacking their way across the Balkans. Shortly after crashing a wedding, they run into a mysterious Slav who goes by St. Peter, offering to give them an authentic tour of the region. Never trust anyone who's that you meet in Europe who's going to give you an authentic tour of the region. The young couple takes him up on the proposal, dummies, but soon fall prey to St. Peter's increasingly strange and manipulative behaviors. You could have predicted that. Culminating with Gov's sudden disappearance, desperate to find him and confident that St. Peter is somehow connected to his vanishing, Cass is pulled deeper and deeper into a sinister web of violence as she comes to realize St. Peter's terrifying true intentions. Big shock there. Big shock there. Don't trust strangers, people. Really don't. I mean, I don't know how to say that. If movies tell us one thing, if horror movies tell us one thing, don't trust strangers in foreign countries. Um, when you're on vacation, we've seen Taken. You know what I mean? Um, but that's that. Let me move on to the partner labels now, because I'm slowly losing my voice, and I want to be able to actually tell you guys about the great partner label releases of this month without completely fading into obscurity here. So we've got partner labels galore. Like I said, this is the best part. My favorite part of the Vinegar Syndrome releases every single month are the partner labels. Let me list these off, and then I'll go through the ones that I got to watch. I got to watch, I think, about half of these, maybe a little more. Amanda and the Alien is being put out by AGFA, or our American Genre Film Archive. IFC Films is putting out Bastards, a Claire Denis film. The Bitter Ash is being put out by Canadian International Pictures. Our buddies over at Canadian International Pictures doing some good stuff. Utopia is putting out a movie Femme, which I actually watched, and it's really, really good. One of the best films I could say that came out this year. Go Down Death from Factory 25. Living a Zombie Dream is being put out by Saturn's Core. VHS Hitfest is putting out Lost Prophet. I got to talk about this movie. I got to talk about it. But I'll get to it. Decanalog is putting out Mami Wata. Film Movement Classics is putting out Marcel Pagnol's My Father's Glory, My Mother's Castle. I think I've talked about this before because I think they put this out already by themselves. The Nightcaller is being put out by Dark Star. Nintendo Quest, the most unofficial and unauthorized Nintendo documentary ever, is being put out by ETR Media. Nuts, with a exclamation point, is being put out by Cartoona. I think that's a new label. Yellow Veil Pictures is putting out She's Allergic to Cats. And then Bleeding Skull is putting out Way Bad Stone. So let's get into it. Let's start from the top. Amanda and the Alien is, I believe, a TV movie from 1995. I thought it was going to be kind of unwatchably bad, and but it's not. It's kind of like Earth Girls Are Easy, but things are reversed. Like a reversed Earth Girls Are Easy. It's a fun, lighter version of like something like E.T. a little bit. If Clueless was zapped into a movie when Gen X icon Nicole Eggert falls in love with a body snatching extraterrestrial, it still wouldn't be enough to describe the mind warping charm of Amanda and the Alien. Amanda is an artist who leads a quiet life. That is until she falls in love with a hunky alien who can only survive by swapping human hosts every few days. The bizarro sci-fi comedy is an explosion of 1990s nostalgia featuring navel rings, CGI morphing effects, an indie rock soundtrack from Jane Wedlin of the Go-Go's and Sparks, and an unforgettable sex scene involving Paprika. A smash hit when it premiered on Showtime in 1995, Amanda and the Alien has been newly restored from its original 35mm camera negative. So yeah, it's like an R-rated version of like Earth Girls Are Easy, of like 90s nostalgia's in there through the extreme. There's gratuitous nudity in there just for the sake of it because it's the 90s and that was a thing, especially on like paid cable and something like a Showtime or an HBO. They always had to, like, do things that regular cable couldn't do or that network TV couldn't do, so they were just throwing nudity for the sake of it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a movie that I found kind of charming in its own right. Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of the movie it reminded me of the most. It's that movie with Jeff Bridges, and I'm completely blanking on it because my mind always blanks when it comes to these things during the podcast. That's why I liked having Steven around. He would always save me from my mindful forgetfulness. What's interesting is that during the day when I'm not doing this, my mind is like an encyclopedia. But when it comes to actually doing this, I'm like a deer in the headlights, and I completely freeze up and completely forget about all of these things. Starman, Starman. It kind of reminded me of Starman, in the sense that it's got the romance in it, but obviously it's got that '90s cheese TV movie factor to it. Um, so that's what it kind of reminded me of. That's another John Carpenter movie, coincidentally. Let's see. Got some. Let's see. Humboldt Horror Honey, Bastards, and Bitter Ash are my two faves. Yeah, you know what? I'll talk about that right after. I'll talk about it right now. Bastards, directed by Claire Denis, really good film. I watched it last night. It was actually like the second to last film I watched in preparation. I don't know why I saved it till the end. I just did. It's streaming on Canopy. If anybody has access to Canopy, it's streaming on there. You can obviously, I think, rent it as well. But if you have Canopy, you can stream it for free. Um, but Bastards or Les Salauds or Saludes, I think it's the French word, the French term. Um, it's what a what a pessimistic movie from beginning to end. from, from beginning to end, the movie is just so dour, pessimistic, dark, heavy, dirty movie with a seediness to it that kind of irks you, kind of gets you down and kind of rakes you through the muck, and then it ends and you feel like crap afterwards. You feel so bad after you watch the movie that you need to cleanse your palate with something else because the movie is so seedy, especially the end. I'm not saying anything about the movie other than it centers around this guy whose brother-in-law has committed suicide. So his sister calls him back to help out. She needs his help. She thinks that someone caused his suicide, and she thinks she knows who. So she brings her brother back to kind of help her figure it out. And he gets wrapped up in these things, and you find out what's going on, and it's not pleasant. It is not pleasant at all. It's Yeah, like I said, afterwards you feel dour. You feel real dour after watching this movie, after watching Bastards. Then Bitter Ash from my buddies over at Canadian International Pictures. Um, this is another solid film from them. Um, yeah, it's let me get up the letterboxed review or the letterboxed synopsis. So Des works at a boring job, and his girlfriend Julie is pressuring him to get married by claiming to be pregnant so that she will not have to work. Laurie is living a life of quiet desperation with her husband Colin, an aspiring writer who refuses to look for a job. Des meets Laurie while visiting a workmate who is dying of leukemia. While they go for a drive, Laurie invites Des to a rent party at their house. After this Vancouver counterculture party, Colin finds Des and Laurie in bed together. This movie is fascinating. It reminds me a lot of the French New Wave, but in the Canadian French New Wave. Let me see if I can find it here. Uh, this this release, which was put out by them, let me make sure it's actually in frame in the. So this is the other French New Wave Volume One. They have not put out a Volume Two yet. This is a CIP release. Um, uh, and this reminds me. So Bitter Ash reminds me of something that came out of here because it feels like that. It's got this really loose way of storytelling. It's got loose sense of editing. The characters are very kind of aloof. They're kind of like almost like that beatnik generation. They've got kind of no direction. They're kind of cynical, really. They're like they're directionless young people, who don't really know what they're doing in their lives, and they're kind of just drifting, and you can kind of tell. You know what I mean? And they're just kind of running into each other really at a particular time in their lives. And just the whole style of the movie just got those vibes. it's got the vibe of Breathless, Vive sa vie, A Band Apart, something like that, but it's also much more low key than that. Yeah, if anything, I'm surprised they didn't put it in a volume two of the other French New Wave. That would be that would have made sense. I wonder if we are getting another one, another one of these. Um, but that would be cool. Let me put this back over here. Deal with that later. Um, so yeah, I agree with you, Humboldt Horror Honey. Those are two of the best releases I think of this year. Let me go and actually see what the Bitter Ash has. Oh wow, actually some good special features here. New audio commentary with film historian Stephen Broomer. Hey, that's our buddy Stephen Broomer. Yeah, we've had him on the podcast as well. At least I believe that's him. See, Stephen remembered all of these names, and I just kind of faintly remember the names. But I believe Stephen Broomer, that's our guy. Archival audio commentary featuring Larry Kent and film professor David Douglas, and new introduction to Bitter Ash by Kent. We got Vancouver Memories, new interview with Kent. We have a new interview with star Alan Scarf. Scarf reflects on his body of work. New interview with Douglas. There's a Fantasia. I'm assuming that's a Fantasia Fest Q&A. Yeah, post-screening Q&A with Kent, Scarf, and Douglas. This is cool stuff. This is a nice release. Yeah, new introduction to Hastings Street by Kent. Hastings Street is actually a 20-minute Kent and Scarf's first film, shot in 1962, completed 45 years later. Damn, this is some really good stuff. Really good release here. Let me go over to Bastards and see what they've got there. That's being put out by IFC. Not quite the extras package that CIP put together for Bitter Ash. We got a new interview. We got a new commentary with film historian Sam Deegan. Adapting William Faulkner's Sanctuary, a new video essay by Alexandra Helen Nicholas. There you go. That got me interested already. Got me there already. Archival casting featurette featuring commentary by director Claire Denis. But you got Alexandra Helen Nicholas. That you got me sold. You got me. And I believe the title of the movie is based on a Faulkner work. So that's the William Faulkner connection. The classic author, for those of you who don't know. So let's move on to, let's talk about Femme. What a powerful movie. Dark movie. This movie says it came out in 2023, but I think it came out at festivals in 2023. I think it got its like theatrical run here in 2024. So it counts as a 2024 release. This is being put out by Utopia. Only 1,000 copies left. Yes. Or 592 left, total of 1,000 copies. Jules' life and career as a drag queen is destroyed by a homophobic attack, but when he re-encounters his attacker, the deeply closeted Preston, in a gay sauna, he is presented with a chance to exact revenge. Unrecognizable out of his wig and makeup, Jules infiltrates Preston's life and in doing so discovers power in a different kind of way. So there is this so what you have here in this film is you get a horrific homophobic attack in this movie, something that is obviously straight out of today's world, which we hear about in the news all the time and whatnot. Horrific. And then the person who was attacked ends up by happenstance meeting up with their attacker before, but the attacker doesn't recognize them because they're not dressed in the drag clothing that they were wearing before and the makeup and all of those things. And what happens is his attacker is actually a heavily closeted person. So they strike up a secret relationship. And Jules, who is the person who was attacked, does this as a power play of revenge. A power play of revenge. So the movie's playing on this idea: do two wrongs make a right? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Does something as immoral as that attack, is the answer to that something as immoral as something else? What they're trying to also do is expose them as a closeted person themselves by recording them during their sexual encounters and then releasing it on the internet. Which we've heard about happen many times in life. It's actually illegal to do that in many states. and in many areas. And so it's playing on the immorality of all of this. You know what I mean? And it's not an easy thing to get into. This movie is not an easy watch. It is heavily emotional in all its regards. It's a really great indie film. It's really powerful, really apropos from today's perspective. I won't say what happens in the movie, but I'll just say really incredibly powerful, well acted film. Um, yeah, the movie's called Femme, put out by Utopia. I just heard about this movie recently, actually. Super under the radar when it came to the indie movie world. So yeah, definitely want to see that. Let's see what we got here. Um, yeah, Larry Kent Box would be great. Totally agree. And thank you, Humboldt Horror Honey, for always showing up. Very appreciated. Um, thank you for you know thank you for the support. Thank you for the support of everyone. Thank you for everyone watching, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching later on the replay. Whatever little help definitely matters. Comments, viewings, listens, all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much. And good luck with those chickens. Good luck with those chickens. Uh, it's so let me see. That was Femme being put out by Utopia. We've got just a trailer and stills gallery, and that's it. But there is a booklet essay by Alexandra Heller Nicholas. It has her stamp of approval. That's enough to get you to watch them. That's enough to get me to watch and own this movie. Next we have Go Down, Go Down Death. Yes, Go Down Death, which is released by Factory 25. I believe I got to watch this movie. Let me go back to my diary. Let's see. Yes, Go Down Death. Here we go. So, Go Down Death, a cross-episodic melange of macabre folk tales supposedly penned by folklorist Jonathan Mallory Sinus. Yes, this movie is so avant-garde. Um, it's a collection of like folklore anthological stories that don't really connect with one another. It's a strange episodic stuff. It bounces around. It's avant-garde. It's art house. You don't know what's going on. Just strap in and go along for the ride. It's my kind of stuff. I love that type of challenging cinema. Go Down Death is a wry, sinister realization of a strange new universe, a cross-episodic melange of macabre folktales supposedly penned by the fictitious writer uh, Jonathan Mallory Sinus. An abandoned factory in Brooklyn stands in for a decrepit village haunted by ghosts, superstition, and disease, while threatening to buckle under rumblings of the apocalypse. Soldiers are lost and found in endless woods. A child gravedigger is menaced by shape-shifting physician. A syphilitic John bears all to a young prostitute, and a disfigured outcast yearns for the affections of a tone-deaf cabaret singer. It is everything. Excuse me. It is all of that and none of that. It's a wild, wild movie. I dug it. It's a wild narrative structure. It's American Gothic. It's folk. It's all these things. Yeah. It's got it's directed by Aaron Schimberg. Um, and that's that. So let me move on from there. Hold on a few seconds because I'm about to get into Lost Prophet, which is equally as wild of a movie. So this is another art house, just anarchic type of movie. Awakening a captive to his dreams, James Burton struggles to survive in the wilderness of his mind. A distant mansion draws the dream vagabond down the dark terrain of a new age witch. The dark terrain of a new age witch, punks, and psychotic killer. What? Yeah. Oh, but yeah, that's interesting. Uh, Let me reread this. Awakening a captive to his dreams, James Burton struggles to survive in the wilderness of his mind. A distant mansion draws the dream vagabond down the dark terrain of a new age witch, punks, and psychotic killer. Okay, playing with self-destruction and death, the lost prophet faces his subconscious enemy with passive childlike fascination. Michael Diavia's film is an intense mood piece that adeptly seduces the viewer into a hypnotic state to experience the random curiosities and terrors of the mind. VHS Hitfest could not be happier to rescue this film from obscurity with a beautiful brand new transfer that captures the breathtaking and spooky visuals. This movie is only about 62 minutes long, and it is an acid trip of a film. It is wild, art house, avant garde, just you just gotta, yet again, just like I talked about, you gotta strap in and go along for the ride. Don't try to make sense of it. Don't try to look for a plot. Don't try to look for character stuff. Just go with it. Just go with it. Have the time of your life. It is a wild, trippy movie. But again, not for everyone, but it is for me. These are the types of movies that challenge our senses as viewers, challenge our minds, challenge our what we think movies are. Just visual escapades that these films are. And damn, if it's not interesting. This movie came out back in 1992, shot on 16 millimeters, so it's gritty, grimy, black and white, cool stuff here. Getting a 4K transfer, 4K transfer of a 16 millimeter movie shot, in the woods back in 1991, probably. Just unbelievable stuff here, unbelievable stuff. There's a commentary here by the director. There's the original cut transfer. It says Lost Prophet, original cut 1991 cut, transferred from the original Beta SP. Lost Prophet found an interview with Michael Diavia. We've had the person who runs VHS Hit Fest on the podcast. Super nice guy, cool guy, doing some unique work here with this stuff. And this is one of his most interesting films. Maybe the best film I think that I've seen them release. It really is. But speaking of great films, Mami Wata by Decanalog. Holy heck, this is a good movie. So, in the oceanside village of Lie, the revered Mami Fa acts as an intermediary between the people and the all-powerful water deity Mami Wata. But when a young boy is lost to a virus, Effie's devoted daughter Zinwei warns Effie about unrest among the villagers. With the sudden arrival of a mysterious rebel deserter named Jasper, a conflict erupts, leading to a violent clash of ideologies and a crisis of faith for the people of Lie. Um, yeah, so this movie is dealing with something obviously specifically cultural to, I believe, Western Africa. In this certain cultural area of Western Africa, it's dealing with, their culture, their religion, their customs, their way of life, all of these things, and kind of the disruption of all of that, and kind of the inclusion, perhaps some modern day thinking and some modern day ideas, and how that disrupts all of that as well. And there's a culture clash, there's a violent clash to all of that, and the movie is really, really good, shot gorgeously in black and white. Um, and very well acted. I believe it's also done in their native language as well. Um, it was the Nigerian submission for the Academy Award for Best International Feature. It's a nominee for Best International Feature at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. It's a nominee for Best International Feature at the NAACP Image Awards. Special Jury Prize winner for cinematography at Sundance Film Festival from 2023, so last year. Yeah, warranted because it's a gorgeous looking movie. Yeah, this is a really, really good film. It's getting a commentary with director CJ Fieri-Obasi, who was the director of the movie. The movie runs about 107 minutes long. It's it's in West African Pidgin is the language of the film. Um, yeah, making of a Mami Wata special feature here, deleted outtakes, deleted scenes, cool stuff here. Cool, really good movie. Definitely recommend it. What else did I see here? Just checking. Um, there's my. Okay, I did watch The Nightcaller. Telephone psychic Clementine Carter is pulled into a complex web of mystery when she receives a call from a serial killer predicting his murders before he commits them, puts her into a terrifying game of cat and mouse. Enlisting the aid of her invalid father and clairvoyant coworker, they must use their unique abilities to stay one step ahead of a maniac whose unspeakable acts in the present are nothing compared to his past and future. So you have this clairvoyant kind of telephone psychic who's seeing, she gets a phone call from this killer, and now she is able to have this connection with him where she's seeing his murders of the past, present, and future, and she's got to deal with all of that. So it's kind of like a proto slasher film, and it's got all the proto slasher types of things, and it's fine. It's an okay movie. I didn't really dig it too much. It's kind of predictable and kind of goes beat by beat the way you specifically will expect it to go. It's fine. It's a fine movie. It's an okay kind of movie if you're into that. It's a little low budgeted. I think the one thing that's of note of the movie is that um Bei Ling, Bai Ling is in the movie and stars as like the woman's like close friend who's trying to help her out, and is I think is also one of the psychic at the place that she works. So that was kind of cool to see Bai Ling in a film and in another film that wasn't The Crow. But let's see. Nintendo Quest. Let's go to Nintendo Quest. So Nintendo Quest is a documentary that came out in 2015. It's a documentary it's about Nintendo, but it's also about this guy. Um, so follow video game rock star and fanatic collector Jay Bartlett over 10,000 miles as he pursues his dream to own a complete library of every original Nintendo game. There's just one catch. He has to do it in 30 days with no online purchases. So basically, this guy who's a super Nintendo fanatic decides that he's going to buy every single North American official release of a Nintendo, the original NES video game, um, in 30 days, going around Canada and the United States. He can't buy any online, and he has to pay everything in cash. And this movie kind of traverses that quest for him. And you go through like him going to different stores, different collectors. You get a pseudo kind of brief little bit of history and look in at the history of Nintendo, specifically the early days of Nintendo, by the filmmaker who's narrating the whole thing and who's going along on this journey with his friend. It's a fine documentary. If you're a big video game fan, I think you'll dig it. I wasn't aware of how massive the NES video games system haul is. I think there's like 678 games, official games that were released here in North America. I still have several of them today from when I was a kid. I have them in a bag like over there somewhere, along with my original NES. And I didn't realize there was that many of them. I remember going through stores and looking at them when I was a kid, the boxes, and buying them when I was little at various toy stores and whatnot. So this film is definitely nostalgic for me from that perspective. And you got to learn a little bit about the video games themselves and how valuable many of them have come. There's some here worth tens of thousands of dollars. Like it's a lot of money being spent in the collecting of vintage video game world. Very cool stuff here. Very cool stuff. So that was nice. That's put out by ETR Media, Nintendo Quest. Um, I think that's almost it. I do want to say that I'm gonna look this up. The Marcel Pagnol, My Father's Glory, um, My Mother's Castle was put out. Actually, let me go back. Was put out by Film Movement last year. So they put this out already last October. So this is a re-release of that release. And I've heard nothing but great things about both of these movies, and I still haven't got a chance to watch them. So that's on me. I probably will watch them at some point. I'm very curious in this release. Film Movement has been putting out some really interesting, good movies with their partnership with with OCN and the partner labels. Granted, it's stuff they've already put out, but I'm discovering these movies for the first time, and I'm pretty sure many of you are. So that's really cool. That's being put out by Film Movement. It's um, Marcel Pagnol's My Father's Glory, My Mother's Castle. Those are two different movies for those of you who are interested. And this is coming out in August, and I think that's it. I am exhausted. I don't think I've got anything else left to talk about. Um, that's all I saw when it came to all of these partner labels. Um, but yeah, let me see. Let's some comments here before we go. Thank you, David, for watching. Thank you, David, for supporting the show. Of course, of course. Let's see. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, Modern day. I see a lot of people, obviously play video games straight to this day. It's still a massive industry, but a lot of modern day generation players of video games, like the Gen Z and the Gen Alphas, those kids and whatnot, they would be so frustrated with playing those old NES games today. No save points, only a limited amount of lives. Uh, it doesn't matter how far you got, you would have to start all the way back at the beginning. Oh my goodness, I grew up through all of that tough time. We didn't get save points until we got memory cards with, think Nintendo 64. I remember having save points and save things with that. And of course with PlayStation we got memory cards, PlayStation 2, you know what I mean? Then we got hard drive. And then the hard drives came with Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, all that kind of stuff. So, you know what I mean, saving became a thing. But not back with the NES days. No, thank you. No, sir. Uh um yeah, let's see what else we got here. I mean, the games are hard and don't make much sense. Oh, I believe it. Oh, yeah, you're right. They were unnecessarily hard, frustratingly hard. There's whole YouTube channels dedicated to this stuff. I'm always been fascinated by retro gaming, or what now we refer to as retro gaming. I tried to dive back into it a few years ago, but it's a thing in and of itself. I collect movies, I collect books, I collect comic books. That takes up a lot of my time and space. Um, as you can see, I've got stuff all the way around me, and you can't see offhand, but I've got boxes of comic books as well. So I don't need something else to collect right at the moment. Um, and let's see what else we got here. Some of them are worth a lot of money. That is very true. Um, I was talking about how in the documentary there was one where someone was bidding $70,000 on eBay for a video for an NES game. I was shocked, shocked. If you go to stores now, you'll see them at collector stores and stuff like that. You'll see them underneath the glasses and stuff, and you can go to your local stores and they'll have them. Most of them are pretty cheap. The old NES games, depending on which ones they are, and how many they made, and if they're not rare and stuff. There's different tiers to them, which I wasn't even aware of. That's cool stuff. That's cool stuff. It's all part of our culture and history, at least part of our culture from my generation. The generation millennials. The millennial generation. That was all part of our lives and whatnot. And I like that future generations still have them. You know what I mean? I felt like I think I've said this before. I feel like the millennials, the first generation to really save their childhood, and persevere their childhood. You know what I mean? In terms of, today I can go and get a comic book that came out when I was a kid. I can go and I can get a video game that came out when I was a kid. You know what I mean? The previous generation really didn't have those things. You know what I mean? They didn't have those physical things. They didn't have that. And I think they had to grow up a lot faster, and I think they weren't able to go back and relive their childhoods, and they didn't weren't able to relive a lot of those things, so that their adult life and their childhood life is so far removed. Whereas I don't know if anybody knows this, but I think the people who buy action figures the most, the people who buy these things the most, are actually adults, because they can do that. You know what I mean? We can do that now as we are adults. We can have our childhood and our adulthood and merge them into one, and that can be okay. You know what I mean? And that comes with movies as well to kind of close this all out. I mean, I just bought, for example, I think I showed this off a little while ago. I just bought The Muppets Take Manhattan in 4K. A movie I watched when I was a little kid. I can now buy it brand new format and watch it as an adult and still live with that Muppet magic. You know what I mean? And that's okay. There seems to be this idea that when you're an adult, you have to put away the childhood things, and I don't think you have to. I really don't. We can have it all. We have ways we can have all we want now. You know what I mean? That's just me going off on a diatribe. This is why it was good having Steven around to cut me off in these things. But uh, but speaking of which, we will of course be hopefully reviving our unwatched pile this month. Steven and I. We took last month off just because of scheduling and things like that. Hopefully, we will be reviving that this month at some point, very, very soon. The month is moving by fast already. So look forward to that. I will be having my Criterion sale trip video will be up very, very soon. It's actually already up. I just need to release it to the world. And then of course we will have some other things cooking here on the channel. I'll be back here in 2 weeks to go over what else has been announced. So thank you all for watching. You can find the podcast audio wise on the usual places: Apple Podcasts, Google, uh, Spotify, places like that. Here on YouTube, you can watch, of course, the live stream and all that kind of stuff. And thank you all for watching. And hey, keep on watching those movies. I know I will.